It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott's here. Richard Campbell's here. He's in the Netherlands. We are going to talk about the newest version of Windows Insider builds. A little bit of a mini rant about File Explorer. Why is it faster when it's full screen? Maybe it's the XAML. I don't know. We'll talk about that. Also, it's event season. More events coming up. But Microsoft, nope, they're not going to stream their September Surface event. And then Paul's crush. She's retiring. All that and more. Plus a look at Starfield, the hot new game on Game Pass. Next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 845, recorded Wednesday, September 6th, 2023. My NAS is out of date. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show we cover the latest news from Microsoft. And once again, the fabulous winners and dozers convene. I'll let you decide which is which. Paul Thurrott is here from Thurrott.com. Hello, Paul.
I want to be both.
You could be both.
Hello.
Hello, Paul. He's in Macungie, PA.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where the escaped murderer is, or is that a different part of PA?
No, but it's reasonably close to here. I mean, he's probably somewhere between here and Philadelphia.
Well, that's the problem.
Closer to Philly.
You don't know where he is.
If he was known, if they knew where he was, he wouldn't be escaped anymore.
And that is Richard Campbell, who is in Alkmaar. Anyway, he's in the Netherlands. Hello, Richard. Are you having fun?
I think I qualify. It's the evening, so I guess I'm the dozer.
Yeah. Yeah. And together...
I'm sure that's what dozer means.
I don't know what dozer means. It could be a bulldozer. Could be somebody who sleeps. It could be either. All I know is it's a play off of Windows. And speaking of Windows, what's up with everyone's favorite operating system, huh?
There is some stuff.
There is some stuff.
Yeah. So last week, I think I went on a fairly extended rant about the quality of software that is Windows today. Today, I have a short update about that because Microsoft on Thursday released 3 new insider builds, Canary, Dev, and Beta. Canary and Dev are not particularly interesting, mostly bug fixes. Canary got a couple of changes in settings, but who cares? Nothing major. Buried in the release notes for the beta build, however, was a note about File Explorer, which got some bug fixes. And you may remember I voiced my opinion that File Explorer is hot garbage on a good day. And in the beta channel, which is going to be 23H2, it's even worse. And there's also, this is related. You wouldn't think so, and it may be originally, but it is related. Someone on Reddit this past week posted something that said, hey, this is kind of crazy, but when I run File Explorer full screen, it actually works faster, which shouldn't happen, right? That's crazy. It's a bug. It doesn't make any sense, but a lot of people have confirmed this. And it's because the UX is created today in XAML Islands, partially tomorrow in 23H2 in, the Windows App SDK. In both cases, those solutions were inadequate for their needs, so they had to custom tailor it to make this own special version for themselves. And in both cases, this thing was really buggy and doesn't work well. So I can confirm that I don't green screen as much as I used to, but File Explorer still hangs. The file copy performance is still terrible, but that's kind of been a long-standing problem. We talked about that. And this is what we're kind of sliding into 23H2 with, right? It's like this is
just to be
clear,
of the work. This is not the release version. This is a beta version. This is a testing version, right?
Well, to be as clear, I would say that they will be finalizing this test version as the final version any day now. And one of the problems, or one of the problems / just realities of Windows development these days is that nothing is really done. So even back in the old days, remember they would RTM some version of Windows, right? And there would be a month or 2 or 3, depending on where we were in history, before it actually shipped. And right on the verge of this thing going public, they would say, hey, we released this big Cumulative update fixes bugs, whatever minor changes. That's kind of always been how things are done. The way things are done now is we get like a preview update 1 month, we get a full update the next month. Those things go out in the past randomly or not randomly, I'm sorry, but in tiered access to people who have known good systems, et cetera, over time. While that's happening, each month there's a new cumulative update that could be built, there could be fixes, there could be, whatever in there. So you can't look at Windows 11 version 23H2 or any version of Windows these days as anything other than a slice in time. It's kind of a rolling target. So yeah, technically, yes, the beta channel is part of the Windows Insider program. It's testing. It's not the release version, but this exact code could make it into the release version, only to be replaced over time, possibly every month going forward, because that's how they do things these days. So you don't like to see something as important as File Explorer be in such a sad state. But, this is the company that trumpeted the release of a new version of Paint that had a new WinUI front end, which was a bright white color with no dark mode support. And they screwed up all the keyboard commands. We keep talking about this. And then they eventually fixed it 7 months later. So do we celebrate that?
Is it the tool? Is XAML the problem?
Is XAML the problem? I'm curious what Richard has to say about that, because honestly, XAML is the problem, Leo, but or is a problem. That's actually maybe more insightful than you know. No, I mean it. I'm not being sarcastic.
There is definitely an issue here with what's the development methodology internally for Windows apps right now, because WinUI seems to be in a state. Maui's certainly not mature enough.
Yep. Right.
What do they use? What do roll up a little MFC and go back to basics?
MFC's coming up again on this show. I love that you just said that. So XAML is a version of XML that's, in Microsoft's case, largely used to define user interfaces. Debuted in .NET 1.0, Windows Forms in 2000.
Is it just a text file format like XML, and that's how? And then there's code that takes that and displays it.
So there's some cool stuff going on there. I don't want to totally sidetrack this, but one of the neat things about XAML is you can have partial classes defined partially in XAML and partially in C#, and they interact. And I think that's as a developer, that's amazing. The problem from my perspective with XAML is that very first version of XAML in WinForms was we had a visual editor. Worked great. And then they switched to WPF and whatever came after. And WPF sort of had a visual editor, but it never really worked properly. And I bet if you polled WPF developers over time, most of them would say we never even used that.
There's no XAML involved in WinForms. That's why it works so great.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, I'm sorry.
The anomaly is that WinForms had a great designer because nothing else has had a great designer.
Yeah, there's that. Okay, I apologize. So I forgot that part of the history. But the promise was always that we are going to do this with XAML. It never occurred, and then they stopped talking about it. So
it turns out it's really flipping hard, and the XAML is too flexible for its own good. It makes it essentially impossible to have a real-time parser of it.
Okay, I don't disagree. But the issue is that the people who are working with XAML, who are making user interfaces, and I mean this like today. So in other words, you're one of those young kids I was ripping on last week. You're working on File Explorer. You're really excited. It's your first job out of high school. Right?
Very exciting.
So, but you're a visual person. You want things to be pretty. So, but you have to define this with software code. You have to write XML essentially. And the promise of the XAML C# divide was that you could have designers working in a visual tool on one side, Expression back in the day or whatever it might be. And you could have developers working on the other side, and you could together as a team, because, software development was getting more sophisticated, define, the guy writing the code, the C# code would be doing the back end. The guy writing the XAML would not be writing XAML. He would hopefully be moving things around in a cute little program or whatever. And it kind of never developed that way. So you flash forward 20 years, and I happen to like XAML I in my own stupid, goofy way. And of course, I don't do it for a living. That might be why. Maybe more because I approach it from a developer standpoint. To me, it makes some sense. I don't know that it would from a designer standpoint or a graphic artist.
I mean, there's no code in XAML, or is there? Is it like
it's all code? It's only code.
It's code. Okay.
It's XML code. It's
XML, which is
it's plain text.
Text.
Yeah. But you can You can embed C# in it. That's part of the
problem. Okay.
There's all kinds of problems.
So, because I think of XML as a kind of
this is my
setting, a preference, almost a preference as far as settings file or description, like CSS, where a text-based description.
It is, but in XAML's case, Microsoft did. Honestly, this was very innovative for the day. I really do give them credit for this. They said, look, you could in a XAML file, you define how something's going to look.
Right.
Page.
Here's a button
in an app.
Yeah.
Here's a button. Exactly. And you're going to say here it's these dimensions. It has these things, but you can also do things like name it. And once you've named it, you can access that from the C# code by that name, which is just like VB worked back in the day. But you can also
it's a UI design tool.
But you could literally, if you wanted to, do all of it in C#. And if you wanted to, you could do most of it in XAML. You still have to have C# code in the back end to handle events and whatever.
But so let's say I have a button and I want an action to attach to that button. Normally you put that in the code portion, but you could put it actually in the XAML file description of the button.
Not exactly, but there are. But
I mean, I've seen these interface design tools. Apple uses something very similar. And the idea is you design the interface, use a tool, or write it by hand if you're crazy, and you've got this description of an interface, and then it hooks into code.
Yeah.
Kind of like a website, even. That's how.
Exactly. Yeah, you have JavaScript events hitting, where you reference them in HTML. Yeah, it's exactly like that.
But I would argue there's enough different ways to do that it makes it difficult.
Yeah, they might have made it too versatile. Yeah, I agree with that. Anyway, newer frameworks and things like Flutter is a good example. That stuff is all together. They use a kind of a hierarchy of Dart code.
Much more opinionated. There's a right way to do things.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes it, in some ways that's better because it's like the Italian dressing choice in a supermarket. There, instead of having 117, it's like you get this choice. This is
Italian dressing. Take it or leave it. Yeah,
right. I mean, some people would see the advantage of the choice.
Yeah,
Some people I
like opinionated languages in general because there's one way to do it, and then there's things like Perl where there's more than one way to do everything.
So Richard knows a lot more than I do. That I'm sure my descriptions of this are amusing to him. But the XAML has branched over time, so that the XAML that's in UWP, that's in the Windows App SDK, that's in MAUI or whatever, is also different from each other in some ways, and it makes it a little complicated. And they're working to sort of fix that now, but
branch is way too friendly. Fragmented.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just spitballing here, but anyway, all of this means is as we move forward to Windows 11 now, and they're designing UI in what is essentially the Windows App SDK, the visual tools are non-existent, and you can see the problems, and there's a weird overhead in File Explorer today because of the use of XAML islands and now Windows App SDK that I do believe ties back to XAML. Honestly, like I think you actually hit it on the head. I mean, if this thing was a Win32 C++/assembly language app, as maybe it should be because of what it is, it would probably run a lot faster.
And it was not that long ago.
I know. And it kind of begs the question. I sometimes see like these people like, I can get everything I need to do in Word 95. I'm just going to use that. And it's like, oh, don't be stupid. But then it's like, I'm literally like, well, I guess the Windows 7 version or maybe even the Windows 8 version of File Explorer, would that work in Windows 11? Could I get that going?
But you get into the real issue here, which is like, you have no excuse for making this worse. You really don't.
Yeah.
Pretty basic.
But Windows 11 is part of a form over function thing. I see it in the Windows team these days that I don't like, and it's like, look, something pretty. Look how pretty File Explorer is, and it's like, guys, come on.
Play devil's advocate and think about how this might happen. Is people want to do modern, flexible coding, and they want to be able to separate the UI and the language, the text from the code base. They want to make it easy to design a UI. And then it's that old model view controller way of thinking of code, which is, by the way, now I think often considered obsolete. But anyway, the idea of
always hated it.
Yeah,
but go on.
But the idea was separate functionality into different arenas.
Yeah, sure.
And that's more modern. And I could see, of course, Is XAML related to Xamarin, or is the X just by accident? I guess it's not related to Twitter.
It's
either.
unrelated. It's related to XML. It's just
XML, XAML. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There is a XAML with a Z, right? That Google uses with Kotlin, I think.
Really? Just to be not confusing at all, right?
But there's a XAML with a Z too.
Okay, but we're talking XAML with an X because XAML with a Z is Google.
It's the Windows team itself is a little bit stuck because no one is really creating new Windows applications anymore. Anyway, there's no stomach.
Well, they've really made it hard for you to consider. How would you do it? Like what?
Yeah, but the problem is they have to do it. So
exactly. So
they have to dog food any modern thing they're going to do. They have to dog food, otherwise it's kind of we're still using C++. I hope you don't mind. You guys use the new thing. That doesn't play.
That happened for 20 years. Oh. By the way, so
okay.
That's one of the reasons WPF never really took off. Actually,
it's it is a Microsoft problem that they keep changing the tool set, right? That there's always the next thing.
Well, I think you're seeing struggles between the teams to try and unify the development environment. It's gotten to a point where
Google does the same thing. It might be a size problem.
These are the normal issues of a large company.
Yeah.
Well, and also we're dealing with what is essentially a legacy platform here. The hard computer science work is occurring elsewhere now, right? The days when Windows was the center of everything that we did all day long, were the days when people working on the File Explorer application or whatever front end UI would be the senior employees or whatever. Like the good people would be working on that stuff. So it's a weird thing. I mean, the form over function thing is real. The disparity of tools, the incompatibility of tools with what people, compared to what they want to do versus what they can do, are real problems. They're experiencing the problems that developers out in the world would be experiencing if anyone was even trying to do this stuff, and no one is. So, I mean, for the most part, although I guess you could argue, like, what's the real use case for XAML Islands back in the day, or now the Windows App SDK? It's you have a legacy app of some kind of desktop app, and you want to modernize it. You want to put the WinUI 3 front end on top of it, which, by the way, looks great. Those things do look great.
Well, and that goes back older than that. It's WPF4. It's really Visual Studio 2010 that caused that. A COM-based app with lots of MFC,
right.
And they wanted to layer some WPF into it.
It's understandable. It's just
but it's also 2023.
I know.
Right? Like, really, the first incarnations of that are 13 years old.
Right. I don't mean to say mark my words, like, this is going to be a real problem, but, mark my words, I think this is going to be a real problem. Like, I think the next few months are going to be.
I think we're in a transitory period. And this will get cleaned up.
It's like the dark ages. Right. Yeah. And we'll see what that looks like. I mean, the problem is, of course, the ball keeps getting kicked around. So now the next race, I'm sure as soon as a couple of weeks from now, we're going to hear like AI, it's all AI, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, but what about the things you never fix? And that's Windows, isn't it? It's the archaeological dig of all the old UIs and architectures and all those things that are in there. You can go back and find the font dialog from Windows 95. It's fun, and I don't know. The only hope for this is it's File Explorer. Like, people actually need this, right?
Yeah.
This has to work.
It's going to create lots of friction.
Yeah. So I hope they fix it. But to kind of wrap up everything, I mean, Leo injected a couple of things there that were actually very insightful. No, they're probably not going to fix this before this thing RTMs. Not that that's a term anymore. And no, they're probably not going to fix it before it ships to the public. Will they fix it eventually? Yeah, history suggests they will eventually. We don't know how long that will take.
It's all just an update cycle now through the cloud. There's no cost to them. It's just a cost to us.
Right. We're going to talk a lot about antitrust below. And related to that is the unique situation in which there are win-wins when a company like Microsoft can disadvantage a competitor and advantage their own customers. And then they can make the case that the reason they had to do this was to do the right thing for customers. But unfortunately, a lot of my complaints in Windows 11 these days they're just hurting us. Like, they're just advancing their own aims at our expense now, right? That the edge links and all that stuff. And it's like, it's too bad. It's too bad.
Yeah. I think we thought that the switch to the cloud would make them much more adjacent to our needs. Mm-hmm. But every time you see a rough spot, it's because the needs don't line up.
That's right.
And all of these ad-driven models are part of that problem, because every time they try to use us as the product, it's bad.
Yeah. We also might have seen this coming when Microsoft started, I guess it started technically with Office 365 or maybe, business productivity online suite or whatever it was, this notion that, back in the day, there was a gigantic partner ecosystem that would implement Microsoft technologies on on-premises servers for customers. And it was kind of a middleman or whatever, but they would also do value-added services on top of whatever Microsoft had. And, one of the touchy issues of the past several partner shows in July-ish or whenever that is this notion that Microsoft is taking on more and more of that responsibility themselves. And that's the entire point of Microsoft 365 when you think about it. Like, running Exchange is hard, but who knows a lot about Exchange? Microsoft,
Yeah.
And the partner's like, hey, we know a lot too, but they're getting kind of cut out of that. And maybe we should.
The ecosystem is definitely shifting, and the incumbents are having a tough time. There is space for them, but it's hard. It's not the same.
It's not at all the same. And maybe it's almost like a giant corporation, buying the houses in a neighborhood and then Airbnb them out, and like where the house, now we pay rent to Microsoft instead of to, some bank. And it's like, who is this giant corporation and why are all the rules different now? And, it's too bad. I don't know, but we'll see. I always figured competition would kind of solve this problem. And who knows, maybe if the Mac starts taking 20% share or something, they'll wake up. But,
but the repair window is shorter than the buying window. So by the time you're annoyed enough that it's time to buy a new machine and switch,
right,
they'll fix it.
Someone in the Discord chat was saying if it becomes too bad, you could just install Windows Subsystem for Linux and use a Linux file browser. And it would be an amazing thing if a Linux file browser like Nautilus or whatever running in virtualization under Windows 11 somehow actually worked better than File Explorer.
Honestly, I love everything about that. You should make that video. It's hilarious.
I'm so nervous that might actually already be true. So I don't know. I've not tried that, but that's.
Yeah, but you could save it for April 1st, but I don't think you wait that long. I think you actually have a bunch of stuff you need to copy and making better solutions would be a good idea.
Virtualized Nautilus outperforms File Explorer on same PC by 240%. Oh God, help me if that ever is. I can't.
Yeah. Paul Threat says not April 1st. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I could see it. Anyway, so there's that. Microsoft did not announce this, but they have a deprecated features page on Microsoft Learn for each version of Windows that's currently supported. And the version for Windows 11 noted just 5 days ago that they have deprecated WordPad and will no longer be updating it, and they will be removing it in a future.
Is that a pitchforks and torches moment? I mean, it's WordPad. If they went after Notepad, I'm sure there'd be some heads on pikes, but WordPad.
So I'm fascinated that you asked that question because in my little world,
people thought it was. It is. And everybody said, "Oh, Mary Jo Foley's going to die," but it wasn't. It was just WordPad.
No. This is WordPad, not Notepad.
Yeah.
And Mary Jo is not the only person who uses Notepad, by the way, people. But anyway, the
thing with Notepad, and so Microsoft's response was, "We'll just use Word, which is not free." The thing about Notepad, there's Notepad plus and stuff. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow.
No. I don't want to mix things up here. It's not. We're talking about WordPad, not Notepad.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying that. I'm saying Microsoft said the replacement for WordPad is Word, which is not free.
Oh, yeah. No. Yes, that's true. So there's a whole history here that I think is important to kind of understand, right? Word on the web is free, by the way, but you have to have a Microsoft account.
But that's a web app too. You have to be online.
100%. You can't click on a file on your desktop and have it open in Word for web. So,
yeah, there you go.
I agree with you. You're right. But there's a lot of stuff going on with this, right? Back in the day, right, we had text files like, Notepad, and we had rich text files, which was right before Windows 95, WRITE, and then WordPad and Windows 95 till now. And on the Mac, they have something called TextEdit, which does both. And actually, I think does rich text by default. I could be wrong, but I think it does for some reason. Today, we have rich text formatting through things like Markdown. And I don't understand not using something open that will always work, but people feel very strongly about WordPad on my site for some reason, which it amuses and saddens me, right?
Markdown's not an exact equivalent. because you can't do fonts, for instance, which you can do in RTF. And a lot of email clients on the Mac as well as on Windows use RTF as their kind of better than in between HTML and text, plain text. Okay. So, I mean, I think that's not a dead format by any means.
Oh, all right.
Plus, it's not. Is it Windows, encumbered?
But
Microsoft's killing it.
Is it encumbered by IP? Like
who owns
patents
it
and whatnot? Actually, I don't know that.
I bet no one. I bet that's why Microsoft doesn't like it. Maybe I don't know.
But it doesn't matter because the Word document format is open and anyone can use it. And you could create I could do this. It's this simple. I could create a rich text editor. Like I made my notepad thing. I could have it use rich text. This is very easy, et cetera, et cetera. So there are ways to get around this. The one weird thing I heard from readers, and I mean like dozens of them, is that one thing that WordPad is apparently good at is opening corrupted Word files, which Word can't do. And then you can fix them and they're okay. I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
If it's true, I mean, if it's actually a need. So, for example, I'm positive that I didn't do this and I won't, but I bet you could Google fix a corrupted Word file and you would find 1 million online services that do this for free. So I will tell you, as in the back of the book, I'll be talking about this big digital decluttering thing that I just finished. And a big part of that was me looking at files that I created in Word in the 1990s. I never ran into one corrupted Word file, so I don't know who's having these problems, but I have a lot of old Word files, and I didn't have problems with any of them. So
they corrupt pretty easily because they're not plain text. It looks like Microsoft discontinued enhancements to the RTF specification in 2008. They did own it. It was created by Richard Brody, Charles Simonier, and David Lubert of the Word team. But so this is probably related. Features new to Word 2010 or later will not save properly to RTF. So deprecating RTF solely because it doesn't support current versions of Word fully is probably what's going on.
I don't know. I
don't know if they still own it. I don't know if they still own it. It's not clear. It looks like it might be an ISO spec now, but I'm with all the people. It seems like you don't think that that's a big deal. I think it's a big deal to discontinue it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal.
I don't use Windows, so,
so I don't care.
But I can tell. But I'm sympathetic with the people who do. I mean,
don't care. So the reason I don't care is because you mentioned it's a bigger deal in the Mac email program, and I'm sure you're right. It's just not really a big deal in Windows at all. It just isn't. So.
I don't think we need more proprietary formats. I don't think Markdown does it all. I like Markdown too, but it's not really very complete. RTF
I think it does
between.
What most people need is how I would put it. So
I don't know why they don't just throw RTF into an open source repository and go, here you go.
Yeah, maybe they did actually. I don't know, but the outrage over this really kind of surprised me, and I'm used to my crowd. There are important antitrust issues of the day and big things happening, and this thing got like 10 times as many comments from people as anything else that happened in the past week. And so it's one of those like high volume, low value kind of articles because honestly, I know when I look at the metrics for the site, like it won't have gotten a lot of traffic. It will just have gotten a lot of comments. And so it's kind of one of those weird deals. It's like everything about Elon Musk is like that. It's like a lot of outrage and it doesn't amount to anything.
Right.
But in any event, they are retiring it. So I do think there's a couple of interesting things about this that people might want to know about because actually, honestly, WordPad is actually very interesting. Today it's a vestigial kind of nub on the side of Windows, but it honestly, this was a big deal at the time when they went from from Write to WordPad in 1995. People don't remember this or wouldn't have not cared because they weren't developers, but they actually released the source code for it and they put it up on the Microsoft website and they created an MFC, thank you, Richard, project so people could learn how to write this kind of a program because WordPad, the initial version of WordPad was an MFC program that used it's not MVC, it's like this, but part of the object-oriented C++ nature of those programs was this separation of UI and back-end code. They actually all in code, but that was it was like an early version of that kind of separation of data and logic. So it was an example of how to write that kind of a program, right? So it was, and that was kind of a thing. The other thing is that, like, over the years, WordPad has actually been used as a kind of a punching bag for whatever was new at the time at Microsoft. And they were like, hey, let's put that into WordPad so people could see it. And then developers could see it and say, this is how we could do it ourselves. So, for example, I talked about the open Word document format that happened probably in the Word 2010 timeframe. I don't remember. They added support for that to WordPad. So you could say, see, it's not that hard. We did it in WordPad. WordPad is a joke application. When the ribbon came out, the ribbon is something that developers could use themselves with the Windows Vista, Windows SDK. They added the ribbon to WordPad to say, see, you can do it yourselves. Now, they didn't tell you it was going to take 11,000 lines of XAML, by the way, speaking of XAML, because it does. Because when I was writing that Programming Windows series and the Windows Everywhere book, I wrote a very basic version of an app that wasn't the WordPad, but it was the WordPad ribbon. Let me tell you something. That is a horror show. And maybe the example of why maybe XAML, they should have looked past XAML then. And that was, I mean, when was that? That was 2006, 2007. That should have been a warning sign for everybody.
Yeah, so, well, that was the original ribbon, but they also weren't going to give it to anyone initially. It took a year or two before they finally were beaten into. Oh, and by the way, I'm pretty sure that was Steven Sinofsky that was involved.
It was, yeah. And by the way, that was the version of Windows where, no, it wasn't. I'm sorry. No, it was. Yeah, Windows 7. Sorry, Windows Vista was the one they didn't give it away because it was in Windows. It was in Office. Windows 7 was the version where they did give it away, and there were two UIs in Windows that adopted the ribbon. One was I keep saying the wrong app. One was WordPad, and the other one was, wait for it, folks, File Explorer. Right now, the difference was in File Explorer, because they knew power users were going to freak out, they actually minimized the ribbon by default. In later versions of Windows, they moved to more of a command bar. They got rid of the ribbon, but there was a ribbon in there for a few versions. And if you opened it up, it looked terrible. So it's really not a good UI for some things. Anyway, so it has this kind of neat, rich behind the scenes secret life for developers too. Like that it was always kind of a teaching moment. Which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's funny to retire it.
Do you think this is so I guess my biggest concern is this merely retiring WordPad, which is fine. It's,
yeah, nobody
or is it RTF? Is it an attack on RTF?
An attack on RTF?
Yeah. Well, I think Microsoft would like to get rid of RTF. The problem I would have with that is that RTF is what we recommend if you want to avoid these danger of word macros. You encode your stuff as RTF, and it's safe.
I don't know what to say to this. I mean, I don't think that Microsoft even thinks about RTF. I think
that's more likely.
Okay. I think they looked and said, no one's using this thing. Let's leave it. I bet they haven't updated this in years, and they just finally waited till it hit some threshold.
They said there's nobody working on it, so we're not going to give it to
you.
Yeah,
I think that's all it is. I wouldn't see it as some kind of a...
It might have had to go through a security review or something for the next versions, and like, well, who are we going to get to do that?
Right.
Well, don't be surprised. October rolls around and you see that list in 23. It might be as gone as soon as a month or two from now. I mean, we'll see. But
I mean, it's not like it's going to burst into flames either. Like, you still have WordPad. It's just not. Presumably, it won't show up in Windows 12.
It'd be nice if somebody made.
Somebody did.
There's like a Notepad Plus. Is there a WordPad Plus kind of thing?
Yes, there is. So if you go to Wikipedia and you look up WordPad, you will find it's not very good because, based on WordPad, but because they did open up the source code to this thing, there is, in fact, let me see if I can find it, something called JART, JARTE.
Oh, well, there you go.
A word processor for Windows that's based on the WordPad engine. And I don't know if it fixes corrupted Word files or whatever. It's no longer, actually, they're not updating it either, but there was this thing out in the world. It was just a kind of a simpler, silly looking version of WordPad. I think it supported tabs. Maybe there were a couple of things.
Well, but it did. It's GeoCities vintage. So
I think what you really want, though, yeah, exactly. I think what you're really looking for, if you're concerned with RTF, is just not a word processor. Although you could get like AbiSoft or whatever, AbiWord or whatever that was called, probably does RTF. But
certainly all the open Office clones do.
I bet there are text editors that also do RTF, right?
Yeah.
Because that's
Well, they all did. I mean, that was the point. That was the lingua franca.
It's the same control in Windows. The Notepad app I wrote actually uses the rich text editor. Right. I just turn off rich text. I mean, so it's not that hard to do. There must be a million of them. So it's out there if you want it.
Do you think the people who are complaining on your site use WordPad, or they just don't like?
No, I don't think any of them do.
Nobody uses
I don't mean it literally. I'm sure one or two have in fact fixed a corrupted file with it. Now they'll never forget that. But no, I mean I get it, but no one is. I feel very comfortable saying no one is using this regularly. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's so out of date. It looks terrible. It works terribly. It's no longer compatible with Word like it used to be because it's gotten out of date. It's just. It's just garbage. I mean, it shouldn't be there. It looks out of place next to everything else that's in Windows 11 today, for sure.
And of course, there's nothing else that comes with Windows 11 that's out of date, looks terrible, and is useless. So it's time to get rid of the one.
It seems like an obvious intern project. Like, this is what you put interns on.
So one logical query here would be, well, why doesn't Microsoft add RTF to Notepad? To which anyone who uses Notepad says, you know what?
No.
Keep your hands off of my Notepad. All right, enough. Like, you've screwed it up enough. Like, I feel like the stuff they did, contrary to what they did to Paint, the improvements that they made to Notepad in Windows 11, tab support, the WinUI front end with light and dark support, they actually are using a new version of the rich text editor, by the way, as their text editor. Actually, all that's great, and and despite the modern stuff on top of it, this is also a hybrid app, right? There's some still kind of legacy C++ whatever underneath the covers. It works fine. Like, I've never run Notepad and thought, oh, you dirty dogs, you did it, you screwed this thing up. Like, it works fine. It looks good and it works fine. That's all you could ask for. Paint until about 2 days ago or whatever. Actually, only in the Insider program. Paint as of 23H2. They will have finally done that for Paint as well. I appreciate that. It took them a long time, but okay, that's fine. Could they have done that to WordPad? Yeah, but I think they didn't because the usage wasn't there. Like the usage was there for Notepad and Paint. Remember, Paint was going away for Paint 3D at one point. Notepad was going to leave Windows and be in the Windows Store. Enough people actually used those applications, and there was so much feedback that they had to just leave them in there and actually leave them in there and make them better. Right? Perfect. I think I'm guessing because they've literally never come out and said anything about this, but too few people use it to bother. And to Richard's point, it probably does become a security problem over time as well because they're really not looking at it.
Yeah, I wonder if there'll be enough outcry for them to consider doing something with it, even just putting an intern on it. But at this moment, they're just.
Okay. I forgot a key part of the story. Leo mentioned up front that Microsoft recommended people use Word and correctly pointed out Word is a paid tool. We kind of forget about the various machinations that Microsoft went through with regards to Office and how it was kind of presented to the world. But two, I would point out that I think play into this story are they used to have Office viewer applications. So if you didn't own Office, you could download, I don't know if Word was one, I think it was, but I know PowerPoint was an example of this. I don't know PowerPoint, but I have to open a PPT file. This will do it. I can't edit it, but I can look at it, right? So there was that. And then there was the Office Mobile initiative of probably 2012, Windows 8, right? Where they were going to have, they were going to migrate Office to UWP, and the same application would work on phone, would work on tablet, would work on full PC. Right. The Office team gave up on that really quick because UWP was a problem too. But those apps were free. You didn't have to have an account and you could view Word apps. So I think over that kind of continuum, there were other solutions for just viewing things where we don't really have that today, right? Most people, I don't know what the figures are, but if you buy a new computer retail, you're going to get Word on it. It will complain, but the truth is you can use it to edit actually without an account. It actually, I don't even know that it ever stops you. It just complains a lot. So there's a thing that's there that will let you view the stuff if you want it. So on that rare occasion, you're not a Word user maybe, or you're not an RTF guy, but you have that file. Honestly, most of us have that thing. That recommendation was silly, but it's not, in Windows, it's not a big deal.
Right. But it doesn't seem like a big deal, but we'll see. We're not everybody.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Maybe there's a rich text enthusiast community that I'm not aware of on the Windows side.
That Microsoft's about to find out about.
Yeah. That's how these things go down, right? And then speaking of Notepad, and I've been complimentary of the updates they've made in Windows 11. I will once again compliment Microsoft for adding a feature that I added to my own Notepad app 4 years ago, by the way, which is the ability to autosave text files, right?
Right.
And I think this is perhaps overdue. I think this is kind of in keeping with the notion of what happens when you store documents in the cloud, in OneDrive in particular, but in the cloud in general, in your access.
It's just a modern metaphor. Remember, that was a compelling thing about OneNote was, you don't have to save.
That's right. And it was
anything you do is just there.
Yeah. Let me tell you how many times I hit Control S in OneNote over the years. Right? Just like muscle memory, because I can't stop myself. Yeah.
Keep you alive.
So I'm curious how that works. You'll be able to turn this off if you don't like it. I could picture myself doing that. It's kind of like the tab feature in Notepad where you Control N to get a new window, but it gives you a new tab now by default. And you can flip that back if you don't like it. So I think this is the right way to do things. I think autosaving is one of those kind of customer-friendly features that will save someone's bacon, even if they don't realize it's happening. And it's the right thing to do. And for those people that overthink things, or people like us, and they want to turn it off, you can. So no problem, right?
And you'll be angry when you lose data.
I'm always angry when I lose data. I think 50% of my anger comes from losing data. Data. My boss. Data. And then I'm sorry, and they're also updating the snipping tool. And these are both happening in the Insider program across multiple channels. So it's not clear. I'm thinking not necessarily shipping in 23H2, but by the time that's out, we're all going to have these, I bet. So snipping tool is a smaller update. They're combining the capture bar across screenshots and video captures. And I should say they're combining the functionality of those two things for people who don't want to have the app running, but want to do a screen or keyboard shortcut just to make it happen. It will just bring up the right thing each time instead of bringing up the app and you switch. So eventually print screen by default, that happens today, of course. Win key plus shift plus S will go to a screen snip automatically. And then Win key plus shift plus R, these are also easy to remember, will automatically bring up the toolbar for screen recording and start recording. So not a big
memorize them now.
Yep, it's almost time for a keyboard shortcut update because there's a lot of stuff. It's a big thing.
Yeah. I always wondered what a Windows key was for.
And then if you thought I wasn't outraged enough, no, actually, this one.
No one said no one ever.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, this one I'm actually not sure what's happening, but on the outside it looks bad. So Microsoft has been sending out emails to OneDrive customers. And there are two features in OneDrive that this impacts, this change, right? So there's something called an album and there's something called a gallery. Okay. And I had to go look at OneDrive on the web to even understand what that meant, right? So if you go to OneDrive.com, this is Chris. I stupidly just did this, and now I have to do a 2FA. Okay. If you go to OneDrive on the web, he says again, and you go into, seriously.
If I could zoom in on you, I would.
I just did it, and it made me sign in again. And it's like, this is Microsoft. Anyway, I'm sorry. And you go to Photos, right? Photos kind of has this unique view, right? It's different from the other, the files that you have in OneDrive. So when you go to Photos, you get by default is a gallery view, right? And a gallery is a combination of things. It's memories, right? So recent trips on this day, those things. If you allow OneDrive notifications, you'll get these every day, actually, right? An album is something that you create where you put things into, although OneDrive can create them too. So an on this day for September 1 was created by Microsoft on September 1, 2023. It has 368 photos on it. And those photos are going to start counting against my storage twice because of a change Microsoft is making. And you're like, what? Wait, what?
And it's doing this automatically. So it's like, they want to encourage you to upgrade by eating up all your disk space by creating memories.
So I have questions, right? as one would. Now I'm going to guess. I'm just going to make some guesses here. One, I don't think it's going to apply to the ones that Microsoft creates, right? That wouldn't be fair. That Microsoft is literally just throwing stuff at you so you can use up storage space and send more money to them. That doesn't make sense. However, these things are also a unit of sharing. And that's, right. I think, part of the problem. And I think this might be the hint at what's really going on here, where if you have an album, you create an album and you share it with everyone, maybe you guys went on a trip, it's a couple of groups of people, whatever it is. And you're like, hey, I want to share all my photos. And you do it through a gallery. It's an album inside of the gallery. Microsoft will say, well, you got to pay for the storage for those photos twice. And I think the reason might be related to security / the fact that this thing has to exist twice. It's not a pointer. And there's a great amount of outrage from people who are like, I don't understand this. That's just one file. It doesn't matter how many people you share it with. They're all accessing the same file. And
they're probably not under the hood.
If that's true, you're right. If it's not true, I think Microsoft needs to tell you, hey, just so you know, this is going to count against your storage, right?
Well, the real question is, can you count 3 times if I create 2 different shares?
Right, of the same. Yeah, I know. I don't know. So it's not clear from the email we've seen. I've not gotten it myself. I haven't reached out to Microsoft yet. I'm kind of hoping they come clean on this, but it could be double dipping on storage. I hope not. But, Microsoft, I don't remember when, some number of months ago, started adding your Outlook.com based attachments against your OneDrive storage where it wasn't before. And people kind of freaked out about that because that would, part of the deal was you didn't do that and things change. Yeah. And this is changing. And we know about Dropbox dropped their unlimited plans. We know this stuff is expensive.
Somebody did some reconciliation on storage and figured out how much some of this costs.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that the double dipping on OneDrive represents lazy coding.
Yeah, there you go.
They could be doing this with a restricted pointer. They could even, maybe it's because it has write privileges by default, which you almost never want to hand out anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you just defaulted to read privileges and it didn't double dip?
We don't have enough information. So someday soon, I would assume there's going to be like a help article up on Microsoft Learn or wherever that will probably go into greater detail, and then we'll know and we'll see.
But only after the pitchforks and torches come out. How hard of
and this is so I was joking earlier, but you know how my knee jerk reaction to things. Normally, I'd be like freaking out over this, but honestly, I'm like, let's give them a second here because. It's not happening right now. It's not right away. It's I think it goes into effect next month or in October.
I think you get a reflex where you go, this is even a little too dumb.
Even for Microsoft, I think let's see what they say. I mean, I'll get the tomatoes ready, but let's just see what he says first.
Oh wait, they're always ready. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. I'm always next to a bushel. I don't know why. So we'll see. But that's been the other. I would say WordPad and this OneDrive thing were the two big outrage moments this past week on the site. And I get it to a degree, but actually in both cases, I'm like, you know what? I don't think this is as bad as you think, but we'll see.
No. And if it is, it's going to be quickly fixed because that's dumb.
Yeah, because it doesn't make any sense, and they will look terrible if when Reddit catches wind of it or whatever. It's not going to go well. So we'll see. And that little bit of sunshine was our Windows segment. Not as bad as last week, right? I mean,
I guess. It's not going to be this way every week, is it? I mean,
I don't know. That's up to Microsoft.
It's up to Microsoft.
I don't make the news. I respond to it.
Yeah. We are going to cover the Microsoft Surface event September 21st because they're streaming it. Yahoo!
Oh, actually, they're not.
What?
They're not streaming.
So
I know.
Mary Jo reached out to me yesterday and she said, hey, what do you think of this? And if you go to I think it's event.microsoft.com. If it's not, it's microsoft.com/event. And there's a big thing. Come here to hear what we have to say or something like that. And I literally started, let me see which it is.
Event.microsoft.com.
It's microsoft.com/event. It says, join us to see what's next.
Oh,
Watch the full event.
Yay.
Watch the full event.
Watch it. Yay.
So that's actually different than it was yesterday. But she reached out to them and they said, we are not streaming this.
Yeah.
I know. It
seems too dumb for words.
It might be changing day to day.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah, okay. No, that someone pasted it in. So Kevin pasted in what it said yesterday. It said, tune in to hear an announcement from Microsoft. Not to watch the live event streamed. It doesn't say that.
Yeah.
I know. I don't know what to think. I don't. I'm just so. Anyway, Mary Jo reached out to Microsoft and they said we are not streaming this.
Okay.
Live. That's
Point
what they told
blank.
me.
We're not.
So maybe it's published immediately, post.
I love that this says.
Hourly.
Actually, that's a good point. It says 1 p.m. That's not the live event. The live event starts at 10.
Ah. So
there you go. So it's already
tune in
changed.
at 1
But now,
to see.
there you go. So now they're explaining
the recording.
Now I actually know how long I'm going to be there because I'll be done by 1. that's good.
Okay.
That is literally.
This might be a cost-saving measure. It's just cheaper to do it this way. Streaming costs money.
Okay.
So
this is I think of it as the Windows. It's the Windows 11 File Manager, File Explorer. There have already been 3 versions of it. So, there was the announcement they did via email. There was the change they made yesterday, and now there's the change apparently they made today. So here we go.
This feels like a budget thing. Like they said, we're going to do it like this, and somebody said, well, you're only going to do that with our service here. You're going to pay for that? And they're like, okay, well, we're not going to do it like that. We're going to do it like this.
Yeah, we can stream this live event, or we could do the AI stuff. Anybody? I don't know.
Come on. They've got the money. It must be more that they're afraid Panos Panay will drool and they want to be able to edit that out before they stream it. Something like that.
Maybe they just want him to walk in the crowd again.
That's exactly what they're afraid of.
I'm going to bring some mace to this event just in case, but all right. Anyway, last week.
Are you actually going?
I am actually going. Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to New York for the 21st.
I am.
Yay. Yep. Well,
I'll be in Australia, so I'll wave.
Yeah. What's God for you? That's going to be like 2:00.
12-hour difference.
Yeah, it's terrible. All right. So last week we talked about event season, the Microsoft event we just talked about. The Apple event obviously is coming up soon. The Google event is coming up in early October. I think I mentioned just because hardware, IFA just occurred. Honestly, not much came out of that.
It really is event season, isn't it? Wow.
But there's more. We forgot some. So also Amazon is holding their annual devices event on September 20th. They also don't
stream, and you have to.
Yeah, I'm going to watch that one live, but remotely, but I will be able to see it at least, which is kind of cool. But you're right. They don't.
That's what they do.
Yeah. And then Microsoft is hosting a second event after the special event about OneDrive and AI on October 3.
Wow.
That is kind of interesting too, because I would have thought this suggests maybe there's enough going on with OneDrive that they're not going to just make it part of the big thing. Although OneDrive, Jeff Teeper's part of it, Microsoft 365 commercial, I'm guessing they will at least mention some of this at the special event, but they're going to have a separate event of their own. So that's kind of cool. Or potentially cool. AI, could have used AI during my digital decluttering. Please do not copy files that are exactly the same, no matter where they are. But anyway, we'll see what that does. And then this just happened. I got an email from someone. It's true. If you go to where, Paul? If you go to ignite.microsoft.com, you can register now for an in-person Microsoft event that occurs November 14 through 17 in Seattle. This will be Richard probably knows more. I don't know what you can say, but it's not as big as previous Ignites. They've ever done an Ignite in Seattle. It's not as big of a place. They usually do it in Orlando or Los Angeles back in the day, or wherever they might have done it in the past. Dallas.
Yeah, they did Dallas, or they did in the original Ignite was Chicago. We all forget about that.
Yeah,
they did Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta, exactly. You need a place with a bunch of hotels, right? A lot of space.
And I think they chose not to be in Florida.
Yeah, which I agree with. Although going to Seattle means it's not going to be as big of a show, so it's going to be a hybrid event. Yeah, but if you want to register for that now, I have it. And if you go into Seattle, it's $1,525 a ticket. You can buy 3, get 1 free. It's like Crazy Eddie sale at Microsoft event.
Wow.
Microsoft Ignite.
I do expect to be at that event.
Good. I would like to go to that event. Now, I've not heard about that one, but
then lies the next question, which is there a press component or not? I'm going there as the podcast guy.
Yeah. So there was not a press contingent for Build, which happened back in May, although that was also a hybrid event, right? Smaller than Ignite, I would imagine. It's possible they'll do that for Ignite. I hope not. I would really like to go to this. The Microsoft special event that I go to in a few weeks will be the first live Microsoft event I've been to since November 9th, 2019.
Right.
which is by far the biggest gap in my entire adult life. Like it's just bizarre, like almost 4 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you're just going to take a train up there, I imagine.
We're going to drive because my wife's coming too. And actually, we'll see Mary Jo, and we're going to stay a couple of nights and do some sushi and whatever. So, yeah.
Make fun of Panos. So, all situation normal.
Probably.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just hoping there's a device for me to buy. I'll be excited.
I think there will be.
Yeah.
I do. I really do.
You think there'll be Windows 12?
I think it's an outside chance. I think the way they will frame it is there are AI advances that are coming soon, and there are some that are coming later. And some of that will be Microsoft 365 more broadly, but some of that, maybe they will have. I keep hoping they'll have that conversation. I feel like we know what is going to be in Windows 11 as far as AI goes, and that it's not that impressive. It's possible there'll be an update to that that will make it slightly more interesting. But yes, the big thing is 12.
Yeah. If they're doing neural processors in all the new machines, they've got to have an OS to go with it. It could happen. I hope it does.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
But I don't know
all
anything
sorts
about
of
it.
goes together.
Yeah.
But it does. I mean, the whole thing, you've been, certainly your writing the past few months, everything seems very rushed and haphazard inside of that company right now.
Yeah, and certainly in the part of the company that I deal with, although thanks to AI, I think that has extended out to the rest of the company too, right? That whatever OneDrive we just mentioned, but Microsoft 365 more broadly, I bet if you went back a year and looked at their product roadmap, they had some idea of what they were going to be doing. And then they didn't.
Satya, for the first time as CEO, made an announcement. Everybody Copilot. Right. And for the most part, it looks like the whole company has, so that's something that Steve Ballmer never did. We were used to it from Bill. Bill did Internet Tidal Wave. He did trustworthy computing. Like he could tell the whole company pivot.
So he did actually, right? That's the story that he did. And I think that was the, late last year, November, something like that time frame where, he keeps talking about that language translation back and forth thing. And that opened his eyes, and we got to do this everywhere. And I think that's when all those product teams are like, oh, I guess we're doing something different. I mean, obviously, the Windows team whiffed the hardest on that one. There's just not, I don't know. I just don't think I think it's too early, but they wanted to get something for this coming year. And they came up with what they came up with. I don't know.
I want to take a little break. You're watching or listening to Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott in Macungie and Richard Campbell in the Netherlands. Right as we went to press, so to speak, what does a podcast do? Go to press, go to tape, go to SD card.
We're going to be using tape for the rest of our lives.
Go to MP3.
MP3. Right as we went to MP3, Ignite was announced, or registration opened up, right? Have you talked about that, or is that my?
Yeah,
I did. Yeah,
you did. Oh well, then let's move on. Enough about these events. Who cares? Let's talk antitrust, the most important subject of the day.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, when I go through the list of earlier in the day, it's like, where's Paul going to rage? Like, well, there's some rage sitting right there.
Here comes the rage.
Like we're working to get the medication right. Give me a second. So. It's interesting. So I also look at as I kind of construct the notes. It's I go chronologically, but then I arrange them by topic. So it's interesting to see them kind of break down. And speaking of breakdown, no, but last week I think there was a kind of a Microsoft 365 and AI component, or cloud and AI, whatever it was. This week there's a big antitrust component, and it's just kind of a weird set of coincidences, I guess, in some ways. It's just the way the world's going. I think big tech is heading toward an antitrust reckoning, which is long overdue. Most of it will come from the EU, as we know, and is, but there's stuff happening in the United States as well, and we'll get to all that. But the big thing with the DMA and the DMC in the EU is they have come up with a formal list of all the companies that are legally considered gatekeepers in their terminology, right? These are the giant platforms that kind of fall into different buckets like OSs and app stores and online services and whatever. And in the Microsoft space, obviously, the EU and Microsoft are going back and forth on Teams Microsoft 365 bundling. I think we talked about that just last week. But Microsoft also has other online services, and one of the things that made the list was Bing, little plucky Bing.
Yay for Bing!
Woo!
So
it's just an honor to even be in the list.
To be invited.
Yeah. So Apple, Amazon, Microsoft with Bing, and there's some European company too they're all contesting this designation.
Apple says we don't have 45 million messages users in the EU.
Yeah, I think they do, actually.
I think they probably do.
Anyone could do napkin math on that and arrive at the fact that they have 10 times that many, but it's okay. It doesn't, I don't care about Apple. Apple can do whatever they want. But Bing is an interesting one, right? Bing has 3% usage share worldwide, something like that, 2 to 3. It's not very high. Do they reach that 45 million threshold?
It has to be 10% of EU population uses it.
Yeah. So they may not, right? So the thing is, what's interesting about antitrust, this came up, I should say, what's interesting about antitrust this go round, right? This wasn't the case back in, Microsoft versus the DOJ, Microsoft versus the EU, is that they're actually kind of, the argument here is we're not as big as you think we are, right? It's weird to watch them argue that we're not powerful, right? So this came up in the FTC hearing with Xbox, like, we lost. We don't even compete. I don't even know why we make this hardware. We are a complete waste of time. And like Xbox users everywhere, like, what? It's like they have to make themselves look horrible to beat this thing back, right? So Apple's, that's what Apple was doing, right, with the iMessage thing. That in Amazon's doing it. I don't remember Amazon's point, but Microsoft's doing it with Bing, and maybe in this case they have a case to be made, like we're actually not that big. But this is also coming on the heels of a big splashy AI reveal for Bing, and really pushing Bing again for the first time possibly in 10 years, right? I mean, it's been a long time. And get that blockbuster report from the Wall Street Journal that was like, hey, remember when Microsoft said every 1% was like billions of dollars? Well, guess what? They haven't even gotten 1% extra users. Like, their user base is exactly the same as it was in December last year. And Microsoft's like, no, it's not. It's like you're not counting these people. And now the EU comes out and they're like, oh, you're too big. And they're like, oh no, we're tiny. We didn't even make 1%.
Didn't you read the journal?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. And so I think we're going to see more of this. And it's a fascinating defense.
Yeah.
The marketing, especially a company like Apple, right? On and on and on, how wonderful they are, and all the switches and the wonderfulness of their ecosystem. And they're like, oh no one uses this. And it's like, then why don't you support RCS, you dick? It's like what are you doing? Anyway, it's funny. It's funny. So what I've seen so far is hilarious. I can't wait to see what comes next. I think we're going to see a lot of this. And then I think it was last week, I'm losing track of when things happened, but we talked about this little blurb that Microsoft put in the release notes for a Windows Insider build that I think went out to dev at the time, where, as they put it, system components would no longer open Microsoft Edge. They would open your default browser, which is what everyone's been asking for ever since they stopped doing that. And this cuts the heart of that, one of the weird problems with Windows 11, which is when you go to search highlights, or if you go to a widget story and you click on it, even if you're using Chrome or Firefox or whatever you use, it opens in Edge, right? They're doing it again with the Windows Copilot, which is not, they solved the native app problem by not making a native app. It's just an instance of Edge. They're really trying to drive you to Edge and to all the sites that they have, and all of the advertising that sits behind it, because they want a little piece of that pie.
Yeah.
They're going to stop doing that in Europe to meet the needs of I think it's the DMA, right? It's the gatekeeper law, whichever one that is. I confused the two. And it doesn't go in effect until March of next year. So the dev build, I mean, this might be something that happens in Windows 11 23 H2 timeframe, but it probably won't be October. But it will happen, right? So it's coming. This week, the CEO of Zoom was appearing at a tech conference that I had never heard of, but it doesn't matter. And he said, someone asked him about, how do you feel about this? Like, they're only doing it in the EU. And he says, maybe you should ask the FTC. The idea being that if this is fair and the right thing to do in the EU, isn't it fair and the right thing to do everywhere? And by the way, if you're going to build all these connections into Microsoft 365 to let Slack and other companies integrate, and it's this wonderful world of kumbaya, whatever we're singing around a campfire. I mean, wouldn't we want that everywhere? Like, why would you only do it?
Why would you make separate versions?
Yeah, but
it makes me think of Windows N.
Yes, exactly, as it should, I guess, right? And the fun statistic to the end versions of Windows, and these are the ones that pulled out the middleware components of Windows, the media player, but also the Messenger app and
IE.
Was it IE? Well, IE was separate. It was a browser ballot. Remember, you could choose your browser.
Yeah, I did choose.
It was like spin the wheel and see which one you get. Firefox. But anyway, so nobody cared about those things. I don't know the exact numbers, but you had a choice as no one. Oh, I'm sorry. So I could get the one with everything, or the one that's stripped down where I click on things and like an error comes up. No, I think I'll go with the everyone version. How does that? Or the everything version.
But you get to an interesting point, which may be a recurring theme in this whole conversation, which is there are ways to comply and to concede that have no impact on your business whatsoever, really.
I love that you just said that, because I literally wrote an editorial about that. So one of the fun things that's come out of Microsoft in recent years, we think of it as the Satya Nadella era, but actually in this case, this started with the end of Microsoft's initial DOJ antitrust trial, which was belligerence. It didn't work. Bill Gates cried, stepped down as CEO. Ballmer stepped in. Why are these guys still? They're going to break up the company? Not like, what's happening? Right. And Brad Smith arrived and he said, guys, you know what you got to do? Be nice. Yeah. Like, see what they want, make the deal, and just do it. And so Brad Smith,
and we found out years later, like, had Gates given an inch during those hearings,
they still almost settled, and he gave almost nothing. They were this close. It was 4 or 5 words. Yeah, and it would have gone away. Yep. So Brad Smith has been running the show from the legal sense, right? General counsel. Now I think he's a senior vice president today, but he went vice.
No, he's a president.
Oh no, president. Sorry. Yeah. He went, senior vice president. That's right. You're right. So he's right.
Yeah. I mean,
he's the friendly face, right, in front of Activision Blizzard, saying, guys, whatever. Everyone can have the games.
Everybody can get along.
We will make every concession you want. Yeah. When the EU came down with Teams, the most successful Microsoft product in 2 decades, I don't know, long time. He was like, yeah, we'll just strip it out. It's like, we'll just do it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I don't know why we didn't think of it. Yeah. And so in this world, it's kind of an interesting thing. Do they just give away the farm? But the thing is, if you actually look at the agreements they make, Microsoft never loses, right? Like, there's no version.
No. And this is the point: is you need the press piece. Both sides need the press piece,
right?
Where they say, "Yeah, we're complying. That's fine." What they do is totally separate from that.
It is astonishing. Yeah, and so I stuck to the EU thing, right? The Teams Microsoft 365 bundling, but you could do this with Activision Blizzard as well, right? It's fair to say that this meets the letter of the complaint from Slack in this case, the letter of the complaint from the EU in this case, but it's also fair to say that Microsoft is pretty good. Like, they're doing okay. Like,
they have a playbook for how to respond well to this.
Yeah.
And near as I can tell, the others just haven't learned.
Right. And I think this also speaks to, actually, yes, this is 100% true in both cases. Think about Activision Blizzard for 1 second, and my argument that cloud gaming is not a market and doesn't mean anything. Yes. And Microsoft has said that repeatedly. But what their action is to say, you know what? We're going to meet your demand, and we're just going to give it away to everybody. How does that sound? And they're going to pay us. We're not getting paid. But if this thing was important, they would never have done that. No. Right? So in the case of, now flip it over to Microsoft Teams and 365, and they're like, you know what? We're going to let people not have Teams. We're going to charge them €2 less per user per month if they do that. That's fine. Yep. Knowing that, and this is the argument I made about this a couple of months ago, that Slack and Microsoft 365, or Teams, I should say, are technically not competing in the same market. I mean, yes, they're both collaboration solutions with a chat component aimed at businesses, but Slack largely targets or is popular with startups and smaller businesses. And Microsoft 365 is largely popular with enterprises.
Right.
So given what I just said, if you were a small business, you might be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to save €2 a month. Nice. But those enterprises, they're like, whatever. Nothing's changing. And that's where all the money's coming from. They didn't really give away anything.
No. And the reality is, as soon as you use Slack at a meaningful point, you have to buy Slack Enterprise anyway. And it ain't $2 per person per month.
The other thing they're doing, though, is they're allowing third-party integration into Microsoft 365, right? So instead of open this meeting in Teams, it will say open this meeting. And you could, if you configured Slack, because that's what you chose, you can do that. Sure. And as these companies grow and eventually become enterprises, having that single source, cheaper cost, et cetera, because you don't want to pay for Microsoft 365 and Slack Enterprise. Yeah. You would just want to pay for Microsoft 365. Oh, it's only €2 more a month. How much is Slack Enterprise a month? Oh, yikes.
Yeah,
right?
A little more. A
little more. Yeah. And that's what I mean. In other words, present a friendly face, smile, do a lot of handshaking.
And make sure that all of
answer the concerns
are, we're responding favorably to these changes.
And still win. And I got to tell you, I people have different feelings about this guy. I think he's a genius. This is so smart. So these two antitrust challenges over the past 12 months, he's handled both, I would say, in a very similar fashion. Neither has resolved, right? So we'll see what happens. But if and when Activision Blizzard happens, I can assure you, it's not because of Phil Spencer. It's going to be because of Brad Smith.
Yeah.
So smart.
Don't disagree with that for a moment.
Yeah, crazy. It's weird when you like the parallels just kind of pop out. You can kind of see them. Speaking of parallels, Google next week
Segway City
is going to face off against the DOJ in an antitrust trial in the United States. Does that remind you of anything? So,
I think it starts today, actually, doesn't it?
It's next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. Okay.
Next Tuesday. So here's the thing. Google could have settled this. Google could have done the Brad Smith thing. I think they should have. That's my take. Google's version of Brad Smith is someone named Kent Walker. And Kent Walker believes that he wants to put Bill Gates in a chair, let him slobber over himself for 19 hours and look like a jerk instead of just being conciliatory. He wants Google to do what Microsoft did back in 1997 or whatever year that was. And I think this is a mistake. And literally the problem with there's so many problems. Antitrust is one of those topics, like it just explodes outward. But let's just talk about product bundling and doing things that could help consumers and could harm competitors, right? The two sides of the coin, the kind of paradox, if you will, of antitrust. Kent Walker, Google is literally arguing the reason that Google search is so popular is because it's the best search engine in the world. And honestly, objectively,
that's not wrong.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
But its competitors would say, okay, but you've also forestalled competition but because you see the search results, right? You see the search queries. Yeah. You can see that people are going to a lot of travel sites now. Maybe Google should start a travel site. Maybe when someone searches for Expedia France, you should go to Google Flights France instead, right? And that's what they've done. Amazon does the same thing, right? On that, the Amazon basics came out of this. Hey, a lot of people are searching for USB cables. Should we make our own? That kind of thing. So when you control the market, it lets you do things like that. It lets you artificially promote your own services over those of third parties who are paying you for this.
You've had enough had the advantage of having Gestalt to know these are the products you should make.
Yeah. So if you think yes, no, it's. Yeah, I mean, the parallels between this and Microsoft in the 1990s are very clear. So IE versus Netscape, and we integrated IE into Windows to make it less reliable and secure to, what was the,
it wasn't the argument was app to feel. We wanted the whole OS to restart.
Yeah, right. We wanted, so you can do things that are eventually IE, I would say, won on the merits. And what I mean by that is that IE eventually was a better product than Netscape Navigator. Yeah. However, in the beginning, they did a lot of nefarious things like paying PC makers not to include Navigator by giving them, charging less for Windows if they also included Office, and doing all these terrible things that Microsoft did. So it's possible to do both. And Google has done both with internet search. I'm sure they've done both elsewhere. The EU has at least 3 ongoing investigations into Google right now over this kind of thing. But when Kent Walker comes out and says, all we did was create the best product we could and let the market decide. And I know there are people out there like, yeah. And it's like, okay. The problem is they own 90, what is the number? 6, 5, whatever, 90 something percent of the market. They dominate, they control it. They're it. If you look at like OS market share on desktop, things like Mac OS and Linux actually are measurable. When you look at on these services, Bing and whatever else is out there, they're just
everything else is other.
They're nothing. They're nothing. So unfortunately, when you have a monopoly, which is what that is, A, you have to play by different rules, but B, your behavior that was fun and scrappy and whatever when you were a little guy is illegal because now you're maintaining.
Anti-competitive.
You're preventing innovation from a company that could come up into the world, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, here's the thing though. What's the little asterisk? Everyone knows this, right? What's the asterisk in this argument? OpenAI, right?
There's finally a threat to search.
Microsoft argued in 1997 that even though there weren't a lot of OSs out there, they talked about, by the way, I swear to God, this was part of it. BOS was a competitor at the time. It wasn't just the Mac, right? They talked about Linux, everyone kind of laughed, but they're like, look, this business is dynamic. Things change all the time. Something's going to come out of somewhere and it's going to hurt us. And you might make the argument that they were right. It took a while, but the thing that came out of nowhere was the iPhone, right? And mobile.
And Android, that actually took meaningful market share and became people's primary devices.
Yep. So were they right? Yeah. It's part of it, right? And Google's argument will be, hey, look, people are trying to make the same product we make, Bing, and they're not doing very well. But someday something's going to happen. And even though you're saying that our behavior is preventing future innovation, it's still going to happen. It's like Jurassic Park. Life is going to find a way. And they're right. Eventually, right? That every giant falls eventually. But it is interesting, just as this thing's going to trial, AI is out there. And Google actually is going to do fine. I think even people who were critical of Google back in February, March, whatever, would probably admit that they're doing great. They're going to be right there and it's fine. But I think it might have behooved Microsoft maybe to make the point, maybe wait until this September or, you came out a little early maybe. So here we are, like Microsoft did this huge explosion of AI stuff. Bing went nowhere, nothing. They got nothing out of it. And now this trial is going to start and Google's going to say, look at Bing AI. Look what they did. See, OpenAI, we couldn't stop that. And you know what? That's an argument to be had. You have to include that into the conversation. So this is going to be awesome. There are hundreds of people testifying, including executives from Google and Apple, for example. We sort of think we know that Google pays Apple between $8 and $12 billion a year to make sure search is the default on iPhone. By the way, another example of monopoly maintenance, something that a small player like DuckDuckGo or whoever could never even afford to contemplate doing, right? It shuts them out of that huge market. But maybe we're going to find out exactly how much they pay. Maybe it's 18 or 20. Maybe it's gone up. I don't know. But no one knows.
You talk about the real damage that happened through the antitrust case with Microsoft back in the day. It was the email discovery. It was the nasty language about crushing competitors.
Well, and the way that it contradicted we were just doing it to help the customer thing. Jim Alchin and not just Jim Alchin, I can't remember the name of everybody. Everyone, every time it was like you were waiting. They just asked him a question, let him answer. He goes, "Oh, interesting. I'd like to submit document number whatever into evidence. This is the email. It was all caps, a lot of swears, and you were going to kill somebody. Could you read it to the court, please, Mr. Alchin? It like that. That stuff's hard. Like it's they should have seen that coming. That was really poorly done, right?
This is why you don't go to trial because e-discovery.
Because
they're going to go through all that email.
And you'd think they'd learn after all these years not to put it in writing.
I know, it's crazy. I'm writing a series about tech nostalgia, and Chuck Peddle is a big player in the early mid 70s to early 80s because he invented the 6502 8-bit processor that was used in almost every home computer ever made. And no one remembers this MOS technology, right? The impetus for this chip was that Motorola had the 6800 processor, not 68,000, right? But the 6800, an 8-bit processor. Intel at the time was like 8080 was their chip. And these things were $300-$500 a piece. And he was like, we could make this for $25. Why aren't we doing this? And he made the 6502, $25, but he also made something called the 6501. You don't hear about this a lot. Pin compatible with the Motorola 6800. So Motorola sued. And because of what happened with that, he had made a point of never making sure you don't have anything from Motorola when you come in here. We are not copying what they're doing.
Yeah.
Clean room. They went to trial, and some guy, he was just a designer. He was an artist. He's like, they were like, "Do you have anything from Motorola?" He goes, "Yeah. I have all these documents I made." They're all just artist pictures. He didn't even know how the chips worked. And they were like, "Great." So they had to pay like $500,000 to Motorola and then just cancel the chip. And he's like, from that day on, he's like, nothing in writing ever. You know, like there's a great video with him. The Computer History Museum did I think it's a 4-hour interview, which they're doing, with a lot of people from that era, which is wonderful. And he is a character, but that whole story is beautiful. You gotta,
and I should have burnt the tapes kind of thing.
Exactly. He's so plain spoken. He takes a phone call during the interview. He does not give.
I love it.
He does not give one crap. It's classic.
What?
Yep, classic. Anyway, yes. Do not leave a paper trail, idiot. So, least
of all, a digitally searchable one.
Yes, this Google trial could be fascinating. I am praying to God that on Monday night at 11, they don't just settle. Because I could imagine this happening, honestly.
And even when when this stuff was going on in the late 90s, like news was not as sensational as it is now. Like, are you insane? Do you know how these people make money? And this stuff's going to come out every minute of every day in Discovery for the next few months. Like, you're crazy.
The paper treasure trove that came out of that trial is astonishing. The stuff that came out of the Microsoft FTC hearing back in June.
Yeah.
Oh, just break my heart. It's so good. And this is going to be amazing.
Epic. I mean, every single one of these.
Yep. Oh, every time.
Every time.
Like,
do not bare your soul to the world. Just don't do it.
Send everybody popcorn because they're going to need it.
I can't wait for this to start. I might just go on vacation.
I wish they'd stream it on YouTube because then we could have some fun. But of course,
I know it should be on the. Remember, when the
ads
in the 90s when after OJ, like the Menendez brothers and all this stuff, it was always what they call it, I think Court TV.
Court TV.
They should just be on Court TV. Court TV should come back.
Is that still around? Court TV? It's not.
It's called something different. It's like CI or.
They probably have the Desperate Housewives of the Supreme
Well, it's like MTV. They don't do live court things anymore. They just talk. They just have cheap true crime documentaries that should be caught podcasts, right?
Food Network doesn't talk about food, and on and on and on.
Yeah, but HTTV is
post-truth world, my friend. Post-truth.
Anyway, so yeah, lots of antitrust stuff. My favorite regulator of all time, although Steely Neely was pretty close. Marguerite.
You had such a crush on Marguerite.
Still do,
but we still does.
But Didier, he's a pretty cute guy too. I don't know. He's easier to say his name. Let's put it that way.
That's true.
She's such a badass.
She really is great. Yeah.
And I'll have two things to say about her in a second, but she's bidding for a new job at the European International
Bank.
Yeah. That's what bank.
Yeah. So she's one of the favored, it's good. It could happen. And if so, the person who's stepping in her shoes now will remain until the next elections, but she could be back. I'm holding out. I might actually sabotage her campaign.
Vote against Marguerite.
Marguerite, stay where you are. Save us. Save us all.
One of the standard complaints you hear from certain circles in the U.S. is like, notice that the EU is only going after American companies. There must be a little bit of xenophobia. Am I right? It's like two things. No, actually, most of the big tech companies are American. That's not their fault. We're the Godzilla stomping around in their backyard. Two, if you look up her record, she went after a lot of European companies and did some amazing things. And I don't know the details of a lot of these, but there was a company that acquired another company without going through the regulatory process, and she forced them to unwind it after the fact and won.
Wow.
Yeah. So look her up. She's cool and a beautiful woman, and I would consider a big life change.
Things are going to happen.
I wouldn't mind living in Brussels. That's all I'm saying. Actually, I think the other maybe way to think of it is, for some reason, the EU seems to be able to make laws where here in the United States we're having a little trouble. That's right. Making laws of any kind, let alone regulating.
Well, we also have a regulatory body in the FTC that has chosen the wrong targets, right? They've had 2 high-profile losses. In fact, that's one of the other stories. I mean, FTC apparently met with Amazon behind the scenes to go through a couple of e-commerce-related antitrust abuses. Amazon literally offered no concessions, and they could announce their lawsuit against them as soon as next week, and they actually might seek to break up the company. Anyone else remember?
Why would you do this?
Because they're so stupid. They're just stupid.
It's interesting that Amazon just said, we're not gonna give you anything.
Well, that's what Microsoft did to the
see
day.
in court.
That didn't work out.
Yeah.
We'll see. So we'll see what happens there. And then this one just happened when we were starting. I didn't even have a chance to look at this, so I just linked to the Reuters story. But Google has apparently reached a settlement in a class action suit alleging that the U.S. version of the Play Store violated federal antitrust rules by overcharging customers. Wow. The action was brought by over 30 U.S. states, 21 million consumers. And we'll see what the conditions of that settlement are. Maybe everyone gets a little check or something. But Google, of the many differences between Google today and Microsoft back then, they speak to a market of billions. Microsoft spoke to a market of low hundreds of millions at the time. The damages are so much bigger. Yeah. And Google also faces like several antitrust suits right now. US, EU, and probably elsewhere. It's hard to even keep count. It is amazing how many regulatory bodies have found issues with the way that they do business. Yeah. But they're just building the best product they can. That's what they do.
Best search engine you possibly could have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
And I think is that everything? I think that's all the antitrust.
All right. You know what that means? Coming up.
Everybody needs a Rad Smith. That's what that means.
I know. Everybody.
Where's my Roy Cohen? Xbox coming up. Back of the book coming up. Some brown liquor. I want to talk Starfield. You are watching and listening to Windows Weekly. Have you played Starfield yet?
No, I noticed there were no Nazis or zombies, and
no zombies. Aliens. Mostly space pirates. A lot of space pirates. Ridiculous number of space pirates.
Oh, but interesting. Well, okay. So I guess in this period of space, it's kind of like the, 1700s at sea.
We're exploring. Let's just put it that way. But I was pleased because it was on Game Pass. And I spent an extra $31 to get early access. So I've been playing all weekend. But because I'm a fan.
What do you think?
It's no Skyrim.
It's no Skyrim.
It's no Skyrim. It's supposed to be Skyrim in space, kind of. Same.
I like that. I like that your review is 3 stars.
It's a little disappointing. It's cool. There's interesting stuff. It's a little. They made some unusual choices, I think.
Oh.
Well, for instance, you fast travel everywhere, so it's just a bunch of scenarios that you fast travel to, which, by the way, was the worst part of Skyrim is going, I got to run to another town. Right. So obviously they listen to people. I don't know.
It's like the hyperspace.
Yeah, everything's, you go, where you want to go? Tau City? I'm there. That's it.
But it's the world of Star Trek and Star Wars.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff to explore. It's really cool.
I would also argue that when you're talking about Elderfall, like the Skyrim 5, it's 10 years old now. Like, you don't remember what it was like when it was released.
That's a good point.
It went through a bunch of DLCs. It went through a ton of modding. Like, it's a different game.
Right.
Well, I played Skyrim in the early days. I did not play all the Elder games, but I played Skyrim in the early days. I liked Fallout too, and a lot of people didn't like that. Anyway, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
No, it actually is.
Oh, I was curious.
This is right in.
There's a lot of shit. I did have a question. So I'm playing on the Xbox. Mm-hmm. If I had a Windows PC, I'd play on the Windows PC because I think the controls would be easier. How do you? So I'm going to ask you, as a Mr. First Person Shooter, it's very hard to aim with a controller.
No.
The thing goes, hey.
Okay, so this was an argument I made in 2001 when the first Xbox came out, right? This is an interesting idea. We're never going to be able to play these games that I like to play on this console.
It's so much easier with the mouse.
I would say it's more precise. Okay, so one of the things that happened, because by that time I was the keyboard mouse guy. That was, use the mouse. You can look around with the mouse, right? And you can move forward or move in whatever direction with the keyboards, and then you can fire, and it all kind of came together. Honestly, getting to the point where that actually makes sense to you from a, just a physical perspective takes some time. It's actually very difficult to learn that, especially for a fast moving 3D game. But you do, of course, over time. And then the Xbox comes up, and you're like, oh, I'm playing with like a Fisher Price toy. What is this? So the thing that happened, I would say, and it didn't really come true on Xbox, and I would say more broadly until the 360, which launched as a great console for 3D shooters, first-person shooters. I know there were things like GoldenEye and Nintendo. I don't need to hear from everyone. I know there were things, but for the most part, it was the Xbox 360 that kind of formalized this for working. I just think they made a good system for that to work. Like even mouse look itself was something that John Carmack came up with, John Romero, because they had this real 3D space. And it's like, in Doom, you would fire forward, but if there was a bad guy there, the shot would go
there's
there.
Some hardcore Doomers who don't like mouse look. Say, well, that's cheating.
Right. I'm sure, of course there are. Yeah, of course there are.
That's cheating.
So, okay, fair enough. It wasn't there in day one. I mean, it's fair enough. So there was something that arrived with Quake. I think it was the initial version of Quake was the first game to have mouse look, I believe. But actually, I don't know what they did, but they made it such that first-person shooters could make sense. There's a bit of assistance going on there, right? There's auto aim.
I just solved it by changing the game difficulty to very easy. And then I slowed down. There's a slider for the speed that you're aiming at. And
I think so. I just think that the Call of Duties of the world designed the game to work properly on console from day one, and they work great. They always did. And by the way, I think I talked about this sometime in the past month. There's a further simplification to be had that a controller user would scoff at, just as a keyboard mouse user would scoff at a controller, which is I played Call of Duty Mobile, remember I said, and one of the goofy, and I did use a controller, but that's beside the point because it doesn't change this. One of the goofy things about that game is, of course, it's touch first. If you face a bad guy, you just shoot him. You don't have to press anything.
Oh,
it just does it for you.
I like that.
And that's very off-putting. If you're used to, you know what I mean?
I wanted to talk to him first.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's so, but you, as the control
There's no
system
aiming
gets simpler
is what
and
you're
simpler,
saying. You just go.
Well, there is aiming.
Oh, okay.
You have to, as long as you're pointed at him.
You have to be pointed at him.
You're not always firing. You're not sitting there like, Serious Sam spewing bullets everywhere.
Right.
But if you are moving in a circle and you do face a bad guy, your gun will start shooting.
Boom. Yeah.
So it's just a way to overcome.
Shoot to kill.
Yeah, it's a further simplification. So honestly, in games like Call of Duty, which I did play straight through from 2005 until this year, controller works great. It works great. The complication occurs when, I think it was this past year, actually, I think it was this most recent game, Activision for the first time supported cross-platform multiplayer, not just console to console, where we're on an even playing field, right? But also console to PC. So you're in games.
Always tough.
Yeah. Now those guys, I believe the way they do the matchmaking is that the PC player is supposed to be on a controller, because otherwise we could never keep up with these guys. Right. They're aiming in a precise way that we just don't. It's impossible.
They're using the mouse.
Yeah.
I don't know. Every PC player is expected to run into a wall first before they start playing.
That's how I play.
I can't stand up and demonstrate this, but I had a friend back in the 90s who it was like, I'm the Doom guy, and he would like walk into a wall, and then he would make it through the door. And that was because with the keyboard, it was very rough. That was kind of how you would kind of aim for the door, but you would hit the wall next to the door.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I always thought was pretty funny.
So maybe you played it so long, you're probably also used to it. Like you can move the cursor, the sight, gun sight slowly. And
well, okay. Actually, in your defense, Leo, I was talking to Brad about this, and Brad's been playing. He plays not Fortnite. He plays Warzone now, but he's played all the Call of Duty games and all that stuff. And he actually said the Achilles heel to this game is the when you have to fight someone with a gun. Like it's something wrong. Like it seems not to work. I haven't played it, so I can't. But so you might be just right. It may not just work well.
Okay. I mean, it's fun to explore. It's fine. I'll play it for a while. I like it. Well, hey, it's great that it was Game Pass, right?
I will lower myself.
I didn't have to pay for it, really. So that's
a good ecosystem.
Thing.
It's a good idea.
Now, do you think Sony's looking at it, because there is no PlayStation version, and saying, see, I told you, Marguerite Vestager.
So we'll see how big of a deal it is. I feel like Starfield entered in a place where they couldn't win, meaning it was never going to be good enough to live up to the hype, right?
Yeah. Right.
I think it was Phil Spencer had said something, which I thought was honest. I love that guy, but whoever said this, I thought this was nonsensical. This will be the least buggy game that this studio has ever published. You're like, dude, stop.
It's just screaming out to the gods of vengeance and irony.
Hubris.
Exactly.
It is pretty stable. I haven't had any issues. I haven't seen any big showstoppers.
Well, we talk a lot because you and I witnessed this live together, but the horrible late stage reveal of Halo Infinite, and then they delayed it for a year, and that thing still came out horrible shape, lots of missing features.
Yeah.
To this day is not quite where it probably should have been 2 years ago or whatever, but is getting there. I think the goal for what are we calling this again?
Starfield.
Starfield, sorry. I almost said Star Drive. Sorry,
I get it wrong every time. It's Star something. Yeah, the game,
they couldn't do that, right? So you got to ship the game like it has to be the game. Right? It doesn't mean they won't improve it, and they will. They've said that.
Oh, they've already started downloading and patches.
Welcome to the Xbox console, the place of 80 gigabyte updates.
Yeah.
So enjoy that part.
I want you to play it a little bit just to tell me if I'm wrong or Brad's wrong about the shooting thing, because you're an adept first-person shooter guy. I mean, I
have it on my radar to take it out for a spin by Christmas on the PC, but only on the PC.
Only on the PC.
It turns out you have to stay home for more than a week to actually bother.
No, I really want to play it on the PC, and I think it would be great on the PC, but it's Linux compatible.
Fine reason to buy a PC.
Well, I have a PC. It doesn't work on Linux.
You don't have a PC.
Yet. I have a PC. I just don't have Windows.
I'll try it. I'll put it on a PC because that's where I'll have the storage, but I will use the controller. And I can do that.
Fair enough. Yep. I'm just curious. It's a fun, it's one of those, it's more fun than No Man's Sky, which I had high hopes for as well. A procedurally generated universe and all that. This has a lot. Boy, it's amazing how much content they put in games these days. I mean, it's filled with nooks and crannies. So that's
good. And how much of that content is generative too? Right.
Oh, I don't.
I don't.
Some of it is. Some of the drops are obviously, but the
primary plots are not.
Yeah. The quests are not. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
I completed my thing. I
completed the tutorial quests, and I'm now
like this, but
yeah. It's not your thing. There's no nasty
Western games that are like this.
I liked Red Dead Redemption, actually. I thought that was a good game.
Yeah. There was a game before that I think it was called Gun, which was kind of similar. It was like a Western thing, and there was a main quest, but you could go off and side quests, and it was up to you, how much of the game you wanted to experience. And I think I actually finished that one, but the bigger games, the GTA games, the Red Dead Redemptions, what was the someone mentioned it earlier, the scroll, what was it called? The kind of a Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing from a million years ago. Not Skyrim, but something else from, I don't know. Anyway, there's a whole list of these things and different genres, but I don't know.
You need Nazis. I understand.
I like sneaky things. I like to put a bomb on something where you teleport and hit it and blow up, and then I can hear you out of the corner. Like,
that's a combat first game. This is a combat second game. It's an exploration game first.
Leo, if I wanted to think, I'd read a book.
I know. And actually, Valheim's to me still the perfect game. So it shows what I know. I don't know.
That's why actually even a game like the Assassin's Creed games over time.
Yeah, those
they
are pretty
got
good.
A little tedious, but they got tedious to me. Like the first one I actually finished.
They were pretty.
The second one.
Yeah.
I think they got bigger and more open world. And after a time, I'm just running around. I'm like, you spend your whole day running around. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm running through a market. I'm disrupting chickens. What is this game? I don't know. It's after, but people love that stuff. So people who love to disrupt chickens.
Yeah.
It's wrong with you people. Anyhow. All right. So actually, since we just talked about it, so Starfield came out early access late last week. Microsoft this week announced the first set of games for September that are going to go through Game Pass across PC, console, and cloud. And Starfield, I'm going to get used to that. Starfield is one of those games. And actually, there aren't that many. There are only 3 for this drop. There'll be more later in September. But Starfield, September 6th today is available on day one, right, with everyone for. And early access was Friday? I think last Friday.
Yeah. I played it all weekend, but it came out on the 5th or the 6th. Yeah.
Today, I think it's today. Yeah, I think.
Is that today? Oh, it is today. You're right. It was at midnight.
So, okay. Well,
by now you should have had at least 12 hours under your belt.
That's right. Exactly. I used to do that with Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Stay up until 3:00 in the morning with my kid.
This Liza P looks kind of interesting. I was tempted to look at that one as well.
Lives of Pi.
It's not pi. It's just P.
Just P.
Yeah.
P? Okay.
It's a Souls-like game. Anyway, I'm getting good vibes. My feels are good on the Game Pass. It's worth it.
Yeah, I hope to take more advantage of it. I get kind of bogged down in classic games right now.
Yeah.
But
all that nostalgia.
God, it will consume you. There was a good quote about nostalgia, but it was Judge, the comedian, the guy was a PC guy in those ads with the Mac and the PC, John.
Yeah, John Hodgman. Yeah.
He said, I think he said that, what did he say? Nostalgia was a cancer, or nostalgia would consume you, or something like that. He had some quip about nostalgia where I was like, yeah, he's probably right.
I like Yogi Berra's nostalgia. He said, nostalgia ain't what it used to be.
That's the best.
What else?
Like
what else?
Malapropism or whatever.
Yeah, he was the king of that, wasn't he? Oh,
yeah, he was.
Nobody goes. Let's see. Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, even one of those would be great, but he has a million of them.
Oh, a million of them.
So, sometime in the past month or so, I commented about the pending demise of an Xbox app that was called the Xbox Console Companion, which is a stupid name for an app, but among the various things, remember back in the Xbox 360 timeframe, we had Xbox Smart Screen, I think it was called, or what was it called? Something like Smart Screen. It was like this idea that you would have like a console or a tablet, and you could like beam the thing you were doing up to the TV that has the Xbox on it. You had a Windows Phone maybe back in the day, right? Wow. So we had that kind of app, and we come forward to Windows 10, Windows 11 now. We have like an Xbox app, right? And the Xbox app is a front end to your game library in Xbox, not on the console, right? But on the PC, and then a way to go and select games from Game Pass and do that kind of thing. But we actually lost a couple of things with that. And one of the things we lost, which was part of the console companion app, was the ability to access the screenshots and video clips that we made while playing games on the console. And that was the thing. I always downloaded it and used it for that purpose. It was wonderful for that. And that's gone, or it's going to be gone. And so I was like, it's weird that they're getting rid of this, because this is a need. Like, is there a place in OneDrive where this stuff is? Like, where do I access this? And the answer is you don't. You can access it on your console. You could copy them to a USB drive if you want. You could share them, and maybe, I don't know how share works on the Xbox, but you could share them. But there is no way on the PC right now to access the stuff that you record on your console. And I think that's a huge mistake and a missing gap. It's a gap, right? So apparently in the Xbox Insider program and the Alpha and Alpha Skiphead rings, which are the really early ones, they're testing a new option to automatically upload all of your game captures from your Xbox to OneDrive, which is exactly what I want, right? It will obviously take up your space. I mean, and
talk about mowing through that 100 gigs.
Yep. Yeah. But I mean, for me, the reason to do this would be maybe something funny happened and I wanted to share it with someone, which is,
the right thing to do is have it on automatic with a set pool. It's like, okay, you get 20 gigs, roll the oldest ones off as new ones come in.
There you go. Yeah. They don't currently let you upload 4K video clips, for example. That would blow away your storage like instantaneously. Yeah. But it's important that they have this. This is a kind of a missing feature, so I'm glad they're adding that. So that will come eventually. The Xbox Insider program, unlike the Windows one, actually moves pretty quickly. So even though it's an alpha now, I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't appear by the end of the year, early next year. It will happen. Like, they tend to churn through the channels pretty well, unlike Windows. So there's that. Microsoft just released the latest system update, the September update for the Xbox Series X and S and Xbox One. And the key feature there is the previously announced native integration of Twitch streaming. Nope, sorry, that was last year. What am I talking about? Is the native integration for Discord, so you can stream live gameplay to Discord instead of just Twitch, which was the thing they had because they got rid of Mixer, which was their thing. It's 720p limited, 30 frames per second. But if you subscribe to Discord Nitro, I don't know what that is, but I assume it's $10 a month or more or something, is 1080p, 60 frames a second. So
yeah, we have a Nitro server. When I saw this, I thought it said to one person on Discord, but you can stream. You can stream to a Discord server. To a server. So yeah. So I could stream. You can go through direct message, and that would be. I think that would be the one. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna do that. I'll do that. I'll stream my failed attempts to kill space pirates. Yeah.
Xbox voice reporting. This is the feature we talked about sometime in the past couple of months and actually, weeks, I should say. And this is an example of how quickly they move. Remember, this was the toxicity response, and people can report people who are swearing or being racist or whatever they're doing and whatever terribleness. And Microsoft will allegedly act decisively. There's been no evidence of that in the past, but it's coming. And some other stuff. But those are the two big changes there: Discord and voice reporting. We talked about Game Pass and Starfield, and then Xbox Series S. Microsoft, and this is maybe the first time I've strongly disagreed with Phil Spencer, but then I also made the comment. Maybe he knows more about the business than I do, but there's no plans yet to do a mid-season refresh of the consoles. For example, a Xbox Series X replacement that was actually 4K all the time at 60 frames a second or better all the time, I think would be enough of a step up. It would need a lot more storage, but no plans for that. But they did release a new interim version of the console, which is an Xbox Series S, which comes with a terabyte of storage. It's not more powerful in any way, but it is in carbon black, not white like the normal Series S. So it's probably more powerful because of the carbon black. So, I'm not technical enough to know, but it looks better. So they're still selling the normal version for $299. The carbon black version is, I believe, $100 more, right? No, actually, it's only $50 more. So there you go.
If we're going to go all pure 4K, they'd have to put like an 8 terabyte drive in that machine.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think Microsoft's hoping maybe we won't make consoles by that point. We hope.
Well, according to the emails.
I know. And then finally, I'm sure there are some Steam Deck fans out there, and Lenovo is going to release their own kind of version of the Steam Deck called the Legion Go. It's a gaming handheld, October $699. It has these two kind of trigger handle looking controllers, sort of like the Nintendo Switch. You kind of break them off and you can put them together and that kind of a thing. It will work with Legion Go glasses, which they announced at IFA this past week, which are like 3D. It allows graphics in 3D space kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know.
Do we need another one of these? I mean, what's Lenovo? Steam Deck has Steam, right? That's its big advantage.
That's what, and I feel like that was the point. Let's do the hardware companion to Steam.
Right. But the idea that we're just going to make hardware.
Yeah, the Steam thing is interesting because they support Linux, right? It's not just Windows, and the Steam Deck runs Linux. And the Steam Deck is not a proof of concept, but kind of a statement that this kind of thing is possible. And
Linux is a good gaming platform.
And Linux it's a low profile compared to Windows. It's not as big and heavy and resource intensive and yada yada. So
this looks like a bigger screen, is it? It looks pretty big. Maybe not. It's just the way they're shooting it.
Where's the? What is the? No, sorry, 8.8 inches.
Yeah, it's 1440.
So that's good. Yeah. 2560 by 1600, 144 hertz refresh rate. 7 is the Asus ROG.
Right.
Steam
so it's a little
7
bigger.
As well.
It is a little bigger. Yeah.
A little bigger. AMD Ryzen based, 16 gigs of RAM, terabyte of storage.
But it's under the 9-inch limit, so Windows is free for them.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Yes.
Yep.
Interesting.
So. Yeah,
they don't show anybody using it as a Windows PC.
No, I mean, right.
That's some little icons right there.
Yeah, fun thing to travel with. Bring a Bluetooth keyboard and a mouse or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know. This is not my thing, but I get it. I get why people.
Did you play Starfield on it? I wonder.
I don't know. I'm actually not sure.
Yeah, you
can poorly.
No, they show it in the trailer.
Yeah, maybe this is the way we're going to get 3D games into the Xbox kind of virtual reality games into the Xbox ecosystem. I don't know.
Lenovo also showed an update to their 2 OLED screen laptop at IFA, I think.
The new Yoga.
Yeah, I saw it.
Somebody must be buying that. Somebody must be buying that. Otherwise,
I reviewed it and I was like, I get it. Someone said something like the world's not ready. And I'm like, I just think the device isn't ready. I think the world is ready for a 2-screen laptop. Honestly, Richard travels with a second screen, right? I mean, this is,
you know where to put it? Beside the other screen.
Yeah. But also you don't want to type on the second screen, which is the kind of,
I think you get a Bluetooth keyboard.
Oh yeah, of course you
here.
could.
Well, and it comes with one too, actually.
Oh, it does.
Yeah. No, they're different. Listen, there's a million little origami configurations you can do. You can choose your poison, but it may, and that's the Italian dressing thing again. Like maybe there are too many form factors. Like the ironic thing about that Yoga 9i is that its weakest configuration is when it's like a laptop. It just doesn't work well as a laptop. And it's goofy because your choices, think about, the screens are like this, right? So you can put the hardware keyboard down on it, and the half of the screen remaining acts as a trackpad, which drags. It doesn't work very well. But the bigger problem is because of the way Windows works, and maybe this will change in the future, that second screen doesn't disappear. So if you opened a window down there, or you later open a window that always opens on that screen, it goes under the keyboard. You don't even know it's there.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of a weird thing. And the other choice is you can type just on the screen, the bottom screen, and take the keyboard off. Now it becomes, and you can plop your 8 fingers down. It becomes a keyboard, a virtual keyboard and trackpad. And then it's like typing on an iPad, which I got to tell you is a rather tedious experience on a $2,500 computer or whatever it is. And it just, it works, I guess, but it's not.
It is promoted as the new laptop experience. The question is, are you ready for a new laptop experience?
Yeah, I think they'll get it there. I think it's going to require some stuff from Windows too. I think Windows needs to adapt to this. This came up with Power Management. Remember with HP, where they had done that AMD laptop, the Dragonfly Pro this past summer, and it just completely bypasses whatever's in Windows. And so, and it does on the fly, modifications of the Power Management plan as needed. So someone said, well, what happens if the user goes and finds Power Management and says, we'll put it on balance? They said, well, we'll put it on balance, but we just ignore it, and it's like, okay, but because we just do better. You can go into HP's app and turn it off if you want. But their response was, we talked to Microsoft and they're going to make a change to Windows. So Windows something will, these things are going to happen. I think Windows will get more sophisticated to support these new use cases or whatever.
Well, and then really new form factors.
Yeah.
And so.
Yep.
Well,
all right.
What an exciting Xbox segment this has been. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. We will.
I should have more rants for Xbox. What makes me?
It takes
I don't know how you get angry at Xbox. They're none of the market. They're barely making it.
I can see if I can do this without breaking something.
Oh,
what's he doing? What's he doing?
Look at that poor neglected machine.
I can't be mad at you.
Oh. Yeah. There's our thumbnail, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
You don't love it enough to plug it in.
It's all done, covered into like an inch of dust.
Yeah.
That's his S, his Series S.
I love you too much to kill you with electricity.
Yeah, so I leave you there collecting dust.
It's coming.
What are you working on hands-on Windows, Paul? Anything exciting coming up?
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember what we did last time because it's been a little while. We're doing the next recording next week. We're talking October now by this point, but I'm going to go through and talk about that stuff we talked about, the restore OS apps settings thing. I think that would be kind of a fun thing. We're going to do Windows Copilot soon. I know I did a show on what's new in 23H2. I'm having a hard. Oh, I did my Clipchamp wrap up, which is
that's right.
Cool.
I remember they said that yesterday in the editorial meeting, and I got so excited.
I did a 3-part series on Clipchamp.
I know everything you'd ever want to know. Now you might be saying to yourself, "Where can I get this fabulous show?" Well, I'm sorry to say you have to be a member of Club Twit, but there's nothing wrong with that. $7 a month, you get ad-free versions of all the shows. And you get shows we don't put out in public. There are some public versions of Hands-on Windows, every 1 in 4 or 5, little teasers. But if you want the full thing, it's just kind of like Thurrott Premium. You got to subscribe. And not only do you get all of that, you get access to our wonderful Discord, where we do things like, play games, chat about tech, chat about the shows. All our hosts go in there and visit from time to time. We've got some great events coming up tomorrow. Sci-Fi Day. Ant will be talking to Scalzi's next month. That's going to be exciting. John Scalzi. This month it's Daniel Suarez, the author of Demon and Freedom TM and Killzone and a whole bunch of other great books. along with newlywed Hugh Howey, the author of the Wool series. Hugh is just back from Burning Man, where he got married. Unless he's joshing me. So that'll be exciting. That's 2 p.m. tomorrow.
Lots of people get married at Burning Man. The question is, are they married after Burning Man?
Yeah, if you get married at Burning Man, does it count?
If you can survive Burning Man and want to be with the person you went there with, you guys are made to be together.
That's a heck of a test. Also coming up, Lou Maresca, Fireside Chat, John Scalzi, as I mentioned. Anthony Nielsen, our AI guru. Renee Ritchie will be visiting in November. Jeff Jarvis, Doc Searles, and I are going to do the Old Farts Fireside Chat in December. And when we're still voting, I love him.
I really like that guy.
He's great.
I had met him, virtually back in December when we did.
I'm sorry, Paul. You have to be over 60 to join us. We'll.
No, I'm not asking. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to be included. I'm just saying.
Assuming you will.
Okay. Fair enough.
No.
Anyway, when I qualify for Medicaid, we can talk. But but I really enjoyed him. He's a great guy.
Good. Yeah, he's really good. It'll be a lot of fun. We also have Stacy's book club. Stacy Higginbotham is sticking around for the book club. In fact, they're voting, I think, right now on which book. So get on over there if you're a club member. If you're not, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and join. That money, as you can see, is so important. We didn't have any ads this week on the show. You may have heard some ads inserted after the fact, but that means revenue's way down, and it's really important to keep everything going. We need your help. I hate to beg, but sometimes we got to. twit.tv/clubtwit. And now, without further ado, how about the back of the book and Paul Thurrott's tip of the week?
Yeah, so I'm going to combine the tip and the app picks this week because they're the same topic, basically. So it's, and I don't know how anyone does anything, right? Everyone has their own processes for this stuff. I'm kind of interested to see what people have to say about some of this, but I just concluded a round of digital decluttering, right? When we moved to this apartment, someone asked me a questions at some point back in May-ish, and I wrote, you know what? When I get done with the physical decluttering, because we had all this junk we brought forward to here, I'm going to get into the digital decluttering, right? And then we went to Mexico in July, and when we got back, I started. So we're about 5 weeks from then, and I've actually written, I expected to write once or twice about it. I wrote several articles. And I went through the whole process, and not to spend a half an hour on this, but basically what I have is the things that matter most to me are my personal photos, right? And I have active work documents that date back. They don't date back at all, but they're things I'm working on now. But then I have archives of both, right? So I have all the photo scans from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I have, whatever. I have all this stuff. And they're in different places, right? So a lot of it's up on a NAS I have here now. I have all my work documents were in OneDrive, and my photos.
Wait a minute, you started this in 2019?
No. No. The
first article.
No, I mean it's the same.
Oh, it says February 2019.
It's okay. It's tagged the same way. So back in 2019, I.
You did a series like this.
Paper-based photos collection at that time. Yeah. So that was a big push.
the recent one.
Yeah. So what's happened since is that I in addition to things that are organized, right? Like my photos or my work documents, I have these archives that are partially organized. And then I have all these giant lump folders of it's just loose stuff that need to be organized. It was hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes spread across 3 different locations. So over a series of weeks, I actually organized it all. I did it. I thought this was something I was going to do for a little while, give up on because I'm never going to finish it. And then 4 years from now, I'll look at it again, and I actually finished it. So in finishing it, I kind of learned a few things about this, right? There's the obvious stuff. Your important data has to be spread about, different locations, right? Geography matters, right? It doesn't matter if you have 2 NASs in your house. If your house burns down, you lose both NASs. That's stupid. It doesn't matter if you have 1 cloud service and 1 NAS. I think you need to have 2 clouds because someday you're going to wake up and Google's going to be like, sorry, you had a picture of your kid in a bathtub and now we think you're a child pornographer, so you're not getting in anymore. And you don't want to go through that. So replication is important. Geographical diversity is important, but that's all kind of obvious, These kinds of tasks are daunting. They're daunting. I'm literally, and I was talking to Richard about this, the network latency problems, just, moving stuff around. So A few of the things that I did that I think are important are I figured out a way to work with files locally. And if it was OneDrive stuff, it means I synced it down to a laptop, a machine, whatever. So it was always available offline. I wasn't dealing with like a cloud thing or a web thing or whatever. If it was NAS based, I copied it down, same thing, did what I needed to do, and then put it back where it belonged, that kind of thing. So like that was actually kind of huge. And that was one of the first things that got me going. But once you start working with stuff locally, you can start using like local tools, right? So we talked about the Explorer rant I had last week came out of the horrible problems I've had just with performance and reliability of File Explorer because of all these huge files and things, right? So I started using something called Directory Opus, which I think I talked about last week, which has a nice side-by-side view, very similar to File Manager from Windows 3X back in the day, or very similar to Windows Snapped, whatever. Really good filtering and finding and yada, yada, and better file copy performance. WinDir Stat, which is kind of a classic. This gives you that graphical view.
I saw the picture.
Folder.
I love that.
And yeah, so if you're familiar with this tool, you'll know that when you look at a hard drive or a folder structure, whatever it is, and you have a bunch of big files, you're going to see big colored squares, right? And the goal in my case with photos or documents, because photos, those would be videos, right? Would be to have no big anything in there, right? You want to see a bunch of little little tiny things, right? And so you can kind of bulk remove some of the big stuff you don't need. Like I had redundant copies of Windows 8 behind the scenes videos from back in the day or whatever they were. And you pull that stuff out and that's just a huge chunk of it. So it's really nice. I have backup copies of like every book. I've written over 30 books. I've got all my books. I've got all of my work documents now going back literally to 1993. I have all of, photos are all there and organized correctly, yada, yada, yada. You run it and then you have to look for duplicates. And that's where I didn't use this as much as I thought I was going to, but Duplicate Cleaner Pro is something to look at. We're finding, like, in other words, you have like the same version of some backup, which was a problem I had because I would pull down backups from one source and compare them to this other thing. I'd be like, wait, these are the same. And why do I have 17 of them? So that kind of thing is useful. I'm going to be looking for a new NAS. My NAS is out of date and unsupported now and slow as anything. And I hate it. And I can't wait to get a new one. And I'm curious what people think about that. Probably going to be Synology.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to move on to the final stage of this process, which is I have one bin left of paper that needs to be sorted and scanned and then removed. And I just went through that last night, so I haven't written about this yet, but I was delighted to discover that this is not as big as I thought it was. And a lot of it I could just throw away. There's a lot of crap in there. So I will have like a final round of that scanning. And I might actually be done with this. Like I think I might be done forever. Yeah, I know. I can't even believe I'm saying those words.
You won't. Yeah, don't worry.
Well, I don't know where else it could be. Like I think I have hit every storage device imaginable.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think I'm done. Like I think it's done.
Richard probably has good ideas on a NAS. This is the one I use from Synology, the 1522.
It's a great device.
Oh, I just love it. It's pricey. But it's
cool. The chassis is one thing. It's the drives you put in the Mac, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm, now that the house is all but sold, I may not do another show there, or might be one more. I'm looking at. I get to relay out a network. I love that. And then it's like, well, how much do I want to put in, right?
Let me ask you this because I went through a series of things over the years, and I know you've been talking about taking down your last AD server, whatever.
Yeah.
I had a Windows server infrastructure for a time. I had a rack-mounted Windows storage server with a terabyte on it, which at the time was unbelievable. That dimmed the lights every time it fired up, and was unbelievably hot and loud. But over the years, you can sort of see these things going down. Like Windows Helm Server became a thing. I went through every version of that. I think I had every hardware version of that. Mm-hmm. A lot of HP stuff in the house at the time. I went to after they went from that to I think it was called Windows Essential Server,
right?
Which was kind of
it was really small business.
Yeah, but
we did the front end,
stripped down, sort of home server ish.
Well, and I think the Synology really fits into that role. Plus, it also has then it has its own packages. So the one I rely on now is the M365 backup. So nominally our working file set is living in M365.
Yeah.
It's consistently synced into a local drive. So if my accounts got cut off for whatever reason, we have that local store on the Synology. And then the other part of it is when it's working perfectly and you're super comfortable with it, you can start playing with the Docker elements inside of it and make yourself angry and frustrated.
So
and it's really quite good at that.
I don't know if I should even say this. I'm considering something that's crazy. And I think it's going to resonate with a certain portion of the audience. Let's put it that way. And that is this. And this ties into all the subscription cost things and all that stuff that's going on in the world right now.
Right.
I am thinking about getting a Synology NAS, but I'm also thinking about getting two of them. I'm thinking about putting one in Mexico.
Yeah.
And having them kind of talk to each other like they're a little cloud thing, like where they replicate.
Yep. That's what I do.
And at that point,
that's your offsite.
Yeah. That becomes something interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like that's an interesting
Plus,
strategy.
then you have it in Mexico, which, because
that's what I mean. Like
two houses. I have one here. What I did is when I upgraded, I put the old one here. You don't have to have duplicates.
Yeah.
So this is your first. So you'll have a second someday down the road anyway.
So I was so afraid you were going to be like, you're out of your mind. You're like, no.
No. I have one here and one at home, and they back up.
Interesting.
They sync.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's a further step, but I mean,
it's easy to set up. Synology is set up to do that, actually. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's called hyper backup.
That might be the direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I really need it to work better over the network, though. The thing I was talking to Richard this before we started. The thing that really bugs me. I don't know if this is a Windows thing or it's just the reality of the physical nature of this setup, but there's no way for me sitting here at a computer to remotely access the files on the NAS and work with them locally so that SMB or the cable or the wireless, God help you, or whatever it is ever involved. Like it's always just happening there, because it would have been a lot easier to triage what I think was 200 and something gigabytes of loose document, unsorted nonsense or whatever it was, if I could have just done it there. Like it would have been really neat to run the WinDirstat or something to locate the biggest files for, like, get rid of that crap then. Right. You can do it over the network. It's just so slow. Like it's horrible.
Well,
I wish there was a fix for that.
And definitely going wired makes a big difference.
Yep.
And obviously you can boost up your bandwidth ultimately. Like there's lots of choices.
So one little tip, you probably know this, but Synology's naming convention is a little weird.
Oh, that's a little weird. I think they put it's like they put words in a blender and they spew them out. All right, this one's going to be J3.
So DS is disk station. They also have RS for racks, rack station. The first digit or digits is the number of drives it can support. Now notice this is a 5-bay, but the number is 1522 plus.
I was going to say that's because 15.
That's because there's an extender that you can add that would give you an additional 10 drives. So 15 is the max. You know how many are in it because it's a 5-bay. And then the next two numbers of the year. So this is last year's. This is 2022. There are 2023s, and then plus is their performance line, which you want. Versus their value line, only because it has a better processor. The transcode, if you use Plex, it does transcoding, and all of that.
You can do things like buy additional RAM, and it helps with that kind of stuff. And
I do this. Most of these have a slot or two underneath. Mm-hmm. Now you can put an M.2 drive in there for caching small files. So if you have a lot of small files, it really speeds it up. I usually do that. Some of them you can add RAM. Nowadays, they come with a pretty hefty. They're much better than they used to be, really kind of low-powered.
Now you want to transcode 4K.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah. They're getting some.
And my instinct, whenever you have a chassis like this, is you're only going to change it once.
Right.
So load it.
Yeah. I did see, I think it's QNAP, but one of the other vendors actually has an HDMI out on some of their NASs, and you can plug it right into a smart TV and then use the interface just to access whatever the videos are directly. And I was like, that's actually kind of interesting. Maybe if that was the primary.
And a camera server, not that different, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a duty for a NAS as well these days.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, I personally think Synology is better than QNAP, but QNAP does have some nice.
Yeah, no, I pretty much settled on Synology just based on everything I've read.
QNAP's had some security issues.
It all comes down to you got to learn your device.
Yeah, there's quite a bit. DSM. Their network software is
so you guys both basically do something like this. Or how do you access your, like, what's the primary interface? Your files are on a
It's network, so you can you could
they're on an SMB share.
Yeah, you could share. Yeah.
So just
I usually just log in. I don't because I don't. But if I ever needed it, there's also Direct Connect on all of these. You can also bring it and then sit it next to your computer and hook them up together. If you want to do fast transfers or set it up for the first time, that kind of thing.
And that's the other thing. So for some reason, that's all USB 3 something. Like for some reason, like it's never pushed to Thunderbolt.
Yeah, it's not.
I know it's weird, but that would be useful,
cost.
right?
Yeah.
If I could have pulled one of the drives out of my NAS and used a USB interface and put it on my computer and just access the files that way, just for file copy purposes, I absolutely would have.
Yeah.
But that was not a.
They also support gigabit. Ethernet, and there even as an add-on for 10 gigabit if you think you might have, I don't know, in Mexico I think you have a lot of speed.
Mexico
does not do Wi-Fi. I mean, you'd have to have some sort of Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I keep flirting with 10 gigging more of the house, but only flirting so far.
Yeah, yeah. I think for this, the thing, it's one of those things that you're trickling to it anyway. It's just running all the time in the background. I run SyncThing on it, and then it has a copy of all of the SyncThing folders I do on all of my systems. But they have there's a lot of software in the DSM. I mean, there's a ton of software.
I've never used.
You can put a web server on there. It's fast enough to do it. Node.js containers. It's
Portainer runs on it.
Yeah,
and you can take it in whatever direction you want to go in. It does a lot.
Richard's obviously the guy to listen to. Don't listen to me. Richard's the expert.
No, I mean,
but I have used these for years
in this space already. Yeah. No, I'm interested.
Yeah. And then, but what I like about it is there's a bunch of different levels to use it at. You could just use it as an SMB NAS share.
Yeah.
You can use any of the native packages to provide a bunch of services like DHCP, DNS, your Azure backup, stuff like that. And then if you really want to get in the nitty gritty, you fire up a Portainer or any of the Docker tooling and you start running containers on it for specific services you want.
Yeah. And there's a lot of third-party app support too. So it's kind of become, I think it's become the default, frankly.
Yeah. It is the modern version of the home file server that Microsoft made years ago.
Unless you want to get a PC and a free NAS and do it all, roll it yourself. I think that's the best way to go.
You don't want me doing that.
You loved the old Microsoft Windows server.
I did. Yeah. I did.
But it was highly automated. It had a lot of good wizards. It really held your hand through a lot of stuff.
But I also stripped it. I mean, a lot of the stuff that was built in for normal people, like automatic backup of your PC, I never used any of that stuff, right? Over time, I used it the way you're describing. It's basically just file shares, right?
Yeah.
So
the big file.
Look, if Steve Martin could set it up, you could set it up.
That's okay.
He asked me. I told him, get a Synology. And I thought, I'm going to be hearing from this for years. Nice. But no, he figured it all out.
That's great.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good. Yeah.
Good.
It's usable. Is that it? Is that the whole thing? I should be.
Yeah, the combo.
I tried to condense 5 weeks into.
I love it. It's a great series. It's a great series. Lots of good stuff in there. Now it means it's time for Richard's Run As Radio plug.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, and you've got a good one. Oh, I'm excited.
I got Troy Hunt on the show. I officiated his wedding last year.
Did you? Oh, you're friends. Oh, neat.
Yeah, we've been friends for a long time.
He's the Have I Been Pwned guy.
He's the Have I Been Pwned guy, and I really didn't want to talk about Have I Been Pwned because it's been done, right? So this was really the show. He's in this crazy spot where both the black hats and the white hats care a lot about him, right?
Yeah.
Like the best way, if you're a black hat, to know you've really succeeded at a hack is if Troy Hunt validates it.
Yeah.
Because he'll check the data against his own stuff and all the stuff he has at Have I Been Pwned and tell you what's going on. And the thing you dread, and we talked about this on the show, is when you see Troy tweet out, hey, anybody got a security contact at XYZ company? Because that's never good news. It means he's obviously got some evidence of a breach. He's been trying to reach out to them, and he's finally frustrated enough that he's talking in public about needing to reach them. And this is really the basis of this whole show is this: what's the responsible way to report a security breach like that or a data theft? Some of it is, depending on where you live, like if you're living in the EU and you're subject to GDPR, it's pretty clearly outlined there about what you're supposed to do and the consequences for not doing it. In other parts of the world, it's not as clear or well regulated. It's somewhat of a state-by-state thing in the US. But there's also what's right to your customer and ultimately what's good for your business. And unfortunately, an awful lot of the time, ignoring it's not that bad of a strategy, if a little immoral. So we kind of went around this whole conversation. And one of the big parts that comes out of this, and it's true a lot in sysadmin life, is like, this ain't up to you. This is a conversation at the business level, ultimately, that says, how is this company going to talk about breaches? And sometimes you need to initiate that. Sometimes the CFO might initiate it. Certainly when it comes to cyber insurance these days, you've got a CFO signing cyber insurance that has stipulations related to sysadmins that don't even know about it. Like you have to have MFA turned on or your insurance is void. And often there are reporting criteria for breaches in your insurance policy. So, it's worth digging all that up and actually surfacing it and talking through what to do. The biggest thing here is you don't want to be making those decisions while you're in the middle of a breach.
Yes, good point. And freaked out. Yeah.
Yeah, and a little stressed, right? And everybody, going a little nutty. So it's useful to do the sandbox work, to just work through the table of what we would do, who we get called, when do we escalate. And that's where we got to in the overarching conversation. It's just like, here are the steps you want to take. These are the conversations you need to have. And more than anything, you need a plan. Because if you don't have a plan, you're going to have a tough time.
Boy, you get great people. This is a must listen. Breach Reporting with Troy Hunt, show 896, runnasradio.com. Wow. Awesome. Yeah. Let's booze it up. I'm sorry. Did I say that? How about a discussion of fine, sophisticated brown liquors?
Well, I got some fun today because I got the bottle.
Ooh, look at that. That's pretty.
Yeah. So my friend Remy, who I'm staying with right now.
Looks empty, Richard. Is that how it comes?
It's slightly wounded bottle.
That did look empty.
That
lightly used.
Oh, there's a little bit. A little bit.
There you go.
A little bit left.
This is the Old Perth 23.
Nice.
And, we enjoyed it earlier this week. And I thought, this is a cool whiskey. I'm gonna read up a bit about it. And I'm, pretty used to reading up about whiskeys. And so as the story unfolded before me, I thought, wow, this will be fun to share with all of you as well. So obviously it's about a whiskey, but ultimately it comes down to a group of people. And most of the time when I tell stories about whiskey being made, it goes back to like the 1700s and the 1800s. But this story starts in 1982. It is a modern whiskey story. So back in 82, John Murray & Co. was a company founded on the Isle of Mull. Isle of Mull is the big island just west of Oban on the west side of Scotland. And they were not making whiskey. They were making whiskey liqueur. Their original product was a product called the Columba Cream, named after Saint Columba, who was from the Isle of Iona, which is a little island just off the west of the Isle of Mull. And this is in the 6th century, and he was one of the monks that brought Christianity to Scotland. And so that's Columba Cream. And after a few years of selling that, John Murray & Co. were starting to make a couple of other liqueur creams. And so they moved to Perth, Scotland. Now, Perth is due east of Mull. It's almost all the way on the east side of Scotland. And it's one of the oldest cities in Scotland. This is where, in a lot of ways, this just becomes a story of Perth. Like it's kind of a love story about Perth. This is north of Edinburgh. There's been people living in that area clearly identified for at least 8,000 years into the Mesolithic period. There's about 50,000 people in the city today. This is where Scone Abbey is, as in the Stone of Sconce or the Stone of Destiny, which we talked about on a past show around Oban. This is where that stone used to live, was in the Abbey near Perth. And it's right in the southeast corner of the Highlands. In fact, one would argue it's at the beginning of the lowlands. And through much of the 19th century, in the 1800s, it was the blending capital of the whiskey world. This was the place where barrels came to get blended into special editions of all kinds. And so John Murray and Co. were making several different liqueurs, as well as starting to experiment with making whiskeys. And then in 2005, they kind of got a knock on the door by a group of really experienced whiskey folks. Now, a bunch of these were for the Morrison family, and the Morrison family are the former owners of Bowmore, Glengarrick, and Auchentoshan, which they sold to Suntory in 1994. So they wanted to buy into the business rather than buy it out because they thought they could expand it into a larger range of products, and they liked Perth. So by 2008, they were making a special range of whiskeys they called the Celebration of the Cask. So they don't have a distillery. They're just producing whiskey by buying casks from other places and doing custom bottlings. And they actually bought the old Perth brand, and that's what's on this particular bottle. Is they bought this in 2013 from White & McKay, another old school long-term whiskey maker, and they relaunched it as a blend. And this is a 23s. That means the youngest thing that was blended into this bottle is 23 years old. And by 2014, they renamed the entity into the Morris and McKay. So Morrison is actually the folks that used to own Bowmore and the others. The McKay name comes from Peter McKay, who's another old school whiskey guy. And he actually used to work at the original Perth distillery that's been closed for years and years and years. That's why they wanted the brand. And so this particular bottling that I have here, it's not made anymore. This is from the early aughts when they were just dabbling with making their own versions of whiskey.
Killed a unicorn.
Yeah, it's kind of a unicorn. It's from a small set. It's a 45%, but they have a new Old Perth line, and I included the link in the show notes there for oldperthwhiskey.co.uk. They have other Old Perth variants. The reason I tell this story is because it's absolutely apparent to me that this group of folks are moving down the path of starting to make their own whiskey again. You know, there's folks that used to make whiskey and got out of it because the money was just too good, or and as other investors, like there's a lot to it. And this particular whiskey is an interim step from a group of folks who are headed towards making new whiskey. And that's exciting to me, that it's not just legacy. It's not just the old companies doing the thing, but that they make new whiskeys as well. You look at the color on this. This is a sherry casking. The rumor is that this was bought from Macallan. They don't admit who they're getting it from, but it's clearly a Speyside. Maybe a little hint of peat, the tiniest amount, but it's a pretty sweet, sort of rich smelling whiskey.
He's
no
drinking
upfront.
I'm like, what happened?
He's
Of course I am.
Why do I hear lip smacking? What's happening?
Yeah. So no upfront burn at all. Just sort of fills the mouth with caramel, and then it goes down, and it just sort of heats up on the way down.
I want this now. You describe it so beautifully.
Hello.
I think next time you have this live on a show, you have to make sure we also have it.
Yeah, I delivered 3 bottles.
I don't know the logistics.
I remember my friend Paul when I poured him his first Avalora Bunda, and he sort of sank back in the chair.
Yes.
This is my jam.
Yes.
So,
and then Leo, like Gollum, started to pull it toward him like he was going to steal it.
My precious.
Yeah.
If you can find one, and they're very difficult to find now, coming in around $200 US. When originally bottled and sold, it was less than $100. But it's been a few years. I would say how much I enjoy this one. I would take any one of the new edition Old Perths out for a spin. There's no reason to be too snobby about single malts. You know what I like in whiskey? Tastes good. This stuff tastes good.
I've always loved sherry casked whiskey.
So, yeah.
These
my favorite
really good,
is a sherry cask. Nomad. Fantastic. Just regular drinker.
Can't go wrong. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different lineages now coming from this group of folks. You can call them bottlers, but I think they're headed towards being distillers again, and I'm excited to see them do it.
So right now they're buying the beginnings from a Macallan or someone like that, and then putting them in.
Buying casks from other distilleries, and they're assembling their own additions, essentially.
But we've talked before. I mean, the aging in the cask is really what gives a whiskey its character.
What it's all about. And you can always debate, like, did they age it at the original Rick room or the Rick houses of that distillery, or did they take them to their own place and they've been storing them there and then they put them together?
Right.
This is all relatively recent. So, I mean, for this to be a 23-year-old, it wasn't, they didn't buy it raw. They had it. They'd already been at whatever distillery it was bought.
Because they haven't been around that long. Yeah.
Haven't been around that long. Yeah. But you see the mechanisms taking place to slowly assemble a team to start making new whiskey. And heck, they may even be doing it. But considering they're not going to want to talk about it for at a minimum 3 years to be able to make anything. But really, it's 8 years.
So if I started today and I got a bunch of mash and I whatever else.
Did your thing.
And I did my thing, you'd say it's probably at least 3 and more likely 7 years before you'd get a bottle of something.
Yeah. The Scottish whiskey rule say it has to be at least 3 years old to even be called whiskey.
Right.
And you're probably not going to be that happy with that product.
So you distill it. I mean, I distill it in a day. I mean, it doesn't take long to make it. It's the aging. It's the thing, right?
Yeah. 3 days to ferment, a full day to distill.
Okay.
You're going to spend a week getting it to a point where you can put it in a barrel.
Right. And then
now, if you're doing this for personal consumption, and I do not recommend this because this entire practice is highly flammable and people have blown themselves up and not survived the process.
Okay.
If you get small barrels, so you get like a 5-gallon barrel, because the contact ratio of the raw liquor to the barrel is so high, will pick up flavor fast. So, there's a case for you can make whiskey fairly quickly that way. Is it going to be good whiskey? That's an excellent question. When you talk about buying a used sherry cask, which is 500 gallons, is a massive, expensive barrel I have to buy from Spain, your contact ratios are a lot lower. And so now you're talking about 8 and 10, 12 years to get the kinds of flavors out of it that you're looking for.
Wow.
And you only laid up one. If something goes wrong with that barrel, if it sours, if it cracks, so you really should buy a dozen. I know you're looking for a hobby.
Do you shake it up every once in a while, stir it up?
When it's the small ones, they recommend that. They give it a little term. But when it's the big ones, they're a bit tricky to pick up.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we were at by the way, this was a wonderful tour when we were in Cadiz, Spain. We went to a sherry producer, and it was just wonderful to go to the barrel house. And I think they do turn them, but they have a whole, there's row upon row of giant barrels. It's really very cool. And he said they put the older ones are on top, so it's easier to get to the younger ones.
Right. So, and the week of the show of October 18th, I will be in Porto.
Oh, nice.
Where Port is from. So I'll see if I can arrange that. One thing I've learned about going to Porto is that 20-year-old ports are very cheap there. So I usually load up the bag with those. But,
that's a decent age. That's old enough.
Nothing wrong with a 20.
Nothing wrong with a 20. Yeah. Very, very nice.
Anyway, that's the story I discovered this week. Just having a few drinks of the Old Perth 23 and finding out where it really came from.
Yeah, I think it's fast. That's part of the fun of it, isn't it? It's not just
100%.
It's true of wine too. It's about the story of it. Yeah. And
then now these days I get a chance to share that story.
So.
Yeah, that's right.
Very nice. Well, thank you as always, Richard, for your stories of the good old days. I think I have a picture of some sherry barrels here. Let me see if I can. I was looking for them.
They're big.
They're big. This was a wonderful producer in Spain, and we got to taste it, and it was incredible. Yeah, here's one of the barrel rooms, and you can see, there's. Yeah. La Gitana. Beautiful stuff. Oh, that's the Manzanilla, the earliest stages of it. And then It gets older and older as time goes by.
Time goes by.
And darker and darker,
This
just
is
like
not a
whiskey.
one barrel kind of place, huh?
No, my goodness. My goodness. It was, I guess they're a big producer. I don't know, but and by the time we got to the old stuff, delicious. And I can imagine using that barrel then after you take the sherry out of it for a whiskey, you'd have something. Well, thank you, Mr. Richard Campbell. He is in Alkmaar, Netherlands. Next week, where will you be?
Either Coquitlam or Deer Park, not really sure. It's going to be the final days of the move, so I might be camping in the old place or setting up in the new.
All right. Well, it's back to Canada anyway, but the easiest way to find Richard is to go to runasradio.com. That's where his podcasts, Run As Radio and .NET Rocks, live. And, of course, here every Wednesday for Windows Weekly. Mr. Thurrott is at thurrott.com, THURROTT. That's where, and subscribe. You get Thurrott Premium. You get all of that extra content. Some of it made it into his books, The Field Guide to Windows 10, Field Guide to Windows 11, and the newest, Windows Everywhere, which is kind of about the history of Windows through the developer's eye. Is that an accurate way to describe it, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the type of thing that would not be of interest to non-developers, but really just
really
how
good stuff.
Microsoft responded to whatever was happening in the world at the time, and Windows became different.
Yep. Windows Everywhere. All you need to do is go to leanpub.com and you can set your own price and get a copy of it. We do Windows Weekly every Wednesday, right around 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. We will, our summertime is not for 2 months, but I know some of you are going, or rather, we don't leave it for 2 months. We're still in summertime. Some of you will leave it sooner. I will always give the UTC time so you can figure out what time to listen if you want to watch live. The live stream is at twit.tv/live. There's audio and video there. If you're watching live, chat live. IRC is open to all at irc.twit.tv. You can use your browser. You can also, if you're a member of the club, join us in our Club Twit Discord. We'd love to see you there. After the fact, everybody can get a copy of the show ad-supported at twit.tv/WW. There's also a YouTube channel devoted to Windows Weekly. Best way to get it, subscribe, and you'll get it automatically the minute it's available. Use your favorite podcast player, and you'll be set. That's it for our show today. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here. In case you hadn't heard, Home Theater Geeks is back. Each week, I bring you the latest audio-video news, tips and tricks to get the most out of your AV system, product reviews, and more. You can enjoy Home Theater Geeks only if you're a member of Club Twit, which costs $7 a month, or you can subscribe to Home Theater Geeks by itself for only $2.99 a month. I hope you'll join me for a weekly dose of Home Theater Geekitude.